The time is 6:34. Today is Tuesday, February 22nd, and I'd like to call this Planning and Zoning special meeting to order. Can we have a roll call, please?
Snidow. Here. McCall.
Here.
Guerra.
Here.
James. James. Okay. Chase.
Here. Thank you. We have 4 members present. We have a quorum next, and we have a 5th online, hopefully, soon. Item number 2, citizen comments. At this time, any members of the public who would like to make comments, you are welcome to. We ask that you limit your time to 3 minutes, and you may come up to the podium now.
The Planning and Zoning Committee the last meeting that y'all had. I appreciate Mr. Guerra that we were just, what I'm here for was the one for the bars, that some of you were for the brewing pub and the other one was the bar with no food. And I appreciate the discussions y'all had, and I agreed with every one of you as far as that. The only thing that I was really concerned is because of living here downtown in this area and just not knowing, is our town going to be full of bars? And that was my concern. And Mr. Guerra was very nice to remind y'all or to think of the citizens around the area, and I appreciate that. And I'm glad that one of them y'all sent to the council, and that was okay. And I appreciate the council because they also had a good discussion and they denied it. I'm very happy about that. Nothing that I'm against alcohol. Believe me, I have family that does enjoy it. And I appreciate the council members that they said that they love it, that they do it. It's just the fact that I didn't know, where's it gonna be? Is it downtown? We need to have our restaurants, stores, and I look forward to the, what is it that you call, Dex? I forget all the time that you remind me that we're gonna have the No, your plans that you call, I forget it. The comprehensive plan. I look forward to what then. My only concern, again, the residents. Think of the residents, and we'd like to have a town, nice town. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chapa. Is there anyone else who would like to speak during citizen comments? Okay. Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and close citizen comments. Citizen comments is now closed. Item number 3, consent agenda. We have item 3A on consent.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
make a motion to approve item 3A.
Thank you. It's been moved.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved by Commissioner Chase and seconded by Commissioner Snidow. Is there any discussion on that motion? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion passes. Item number 4, general discussion. 4A, discussion regarding building requirements for manufactured homes. This is Commissioner Snidow's item. Commissioner Snidow?
Thank you. I have actually brought this up on several occasions with our commission, and I'd like to, bottom line, I'd like to adjust our definitions for M2 and M3, manufactured housing, that they are certified, HUD certified product as far as the home, and that they are affixed to a permanent foundation in accordance with HUD guidelines. And the reason for that is that they are more secure buildings. HUD, VA, and rural housing, all three of them do funding for manufactured housing. Actually, when a quality manufactured housing home is, Will, are you able to, Mr. Atkins, are you able to get the slide up?
Working on it.
Okay,
It says
thank
it's
you.
sharing, but it's not sharing.
Okay,
So
thanks.
give me a minute or two. Oh, there we go.
Oh,
And the screen too. There we go.
can you make it bigger, or that's?
I will work on that.
Okay, thank you. Anyway, that's just I wanted you to see the pictures. This is on the HUD manufacturing site, their website, and they show a picture of what manufactured housing was in 1976 and what it should be today. That today is what I'd like to see our manufactured housing look like. And I think we can do it. I think we just need to set those guidelines in place and make sure that our manufactured housing matches those guidelines and that they're quality housing. So I'm for manufactured housing. I'm for affordability. I just want it to be the quality that I think Kyle deserves in the future. So I've provided the specs, the VA specs, to the staff already on the foundation specs that HUD. It would involve that when you do a permit, when the permit is drawn, that both pieces, if it's two pieces or one, has to have the red HUD. There's a tag on it that says it's a HUD certified product. And really, when HUD is certifying a building product, what they are saying is they're looking at structural soundness, they're looking at mechanical, and they're looking at energy efficiency. Those are all the things that people, particularly in affordable housing, need to have taken care of and need to be in place. So nothing is extreme. And so, as I said, I gave the staff the guidelines for affixed to a permanent foundation. When a manufactured home is affixed to a permanent foundation in terms of financing, for at least us and FHA and VA, they are considered a stick-built home. They are a stick-built home. And so people in affordable housing can have a quality home, and it can look like the one on the screen did. So I'm really passionate about it, but I'm hoping that my commissioners will agree with it. I think we need probably to, work with our construction staff, our building and permitting staff. We'll probably need to learn some of the guidelines. But if we just use the language and say that we match HUD guidelines, then as HUD evolves, we won't have to change our stuff. We will just flow with HUD, and that will be the easiest way to change our language rather than us trying to keep up with them. So yes, Mr. Chase.
So I agree. I did some research over the last couple of days. City of Austin, City of San Marcos. Buda, I couldn't really find anything, but both of them require, not HUD, and I don't know if I would want to go that far without researching what the HUD requirements are, but both require that they are placed on permanent foundations and that the foundations are sealed sealed and signed off of by a engineer. So, City of Austin and City of San Marcos both require that on the final inspection. That a plan and you might think a foundation is just a poured in place big slab of concrete. That's not the definition of a foundation. It could be brick, it could be masonry. It has to be 42 inches deep, if I recall correctly, off the HUD guidelines that I read. So they're not having to pour a massive foundation, which does increase. I'm in home building. I know the cost of this stuff. That does increase the cost. But City of San Marcos actually has a really good diagram of where they would like to see the pillars, support pillars, and the number of pillars required based on the weight of the home. So I completely agree. I think it's a great idea. Other cities around us are doing it already. Again, I couldn't find anything for Buda. Granted, I didn't do too much deep dive into theirs after I found two that were looking for what you're asking for. So.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, particularly from someone who has a construction background, because I'm more on the finance side, so I appreciate your input. And so, do you have anything, Alex, do you have any questions?
Oh, no. Well, I do, but anyone else have any?
I'd like to bring up a couple,
ahead.
while I've been researching this and just thinking about this the last couple days and bringing it forward, I'm wondering why, and I don't have the history, but M2 and M3 are distinctly very different products and very different subdivisions. I wonder why we zone them as, oh, you can do M2 or M3. Wouldn't we want to separate them, and wouldn't council want to know what they're getting when you approve it, when we plat it? Is there a reason they're tied together? Mr. Atkinson?
I can tell you the difference between M2 and M3.
Yeah.
One of them is a fee simple subdivision with public streets and public infrastructure where the person owns the land underneath and they can move their house into it. The other one is a non-fee simple. It's a manufactured home park. So you go in and you rent a space or lease out a space for however long your lease is, and it's with private infrastructure. That's the difference between the two. From a built environment perspective, they're very similar from a comprehensive plan. So whenever, if the comprehensive plan says you can do M2, it's probably going to say you can do M3 as well, if that is your question.
Okay. Well, maybe we do it in the comp plan, maybe we do it, but I think that when someone comes in and says, I want to do this on this land, those are two distinctly different looking places. M2, the unit has to be facing the property, has to look more like the photo we saw. That's an M2. It has to be facing. M3, it apparently can be 90 degrees to the street. Is that correct?
Actually, there's an aspect in one of them references the other one from that perspective, so they actually both can. Now, there's at least one manufactured home park in the city that was under development at the time of annexation, where they are allowed to have them not be the long length of the house be parallel to the street. But so sometimes there's a little bit of nuance to that, but generally, if they're going straight code, they do have to both be parallel with the long length to the street.
Okay, so then the longest part of the wall would face the street.
Yeah, yes, ma'am, it'd be parallel to it.
Okay. It's not what I'm seeing, but anyway. So those are the kind of things that I think, someone coming in and zoning, those are two different neighborhoods. Those are two different feels. And it seems to me that we would want to know which one their intention was. They probably know their intention when they come to planning and zoning and to city council. So if we ask them to say, we want M2 or we want M3, then you know what you're getting. So that would be another suggestion I would make. That's all I got.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, for myself, I do agree that I am thankful you brought this forward. I am also a bit worried, as Commissioner Chase was, about a moving target. How agreeing to a protocol that someone else is in charge of, and while every one of their bullet points might be something we agree with, I would personally feel more comfortable with saying what it is we're expecting, item by item, instead of saying HUD, just go with the HUD guidelines. And so I just like he was mentioning with San Marcos and Austin, I think putting a requirement for a foundation with specifics would be a good plan forward. But yeah, I think I would support that aspect of it. This is just a discussion, so really we're just going to talk amongst each other, hopefully give some direction to staff. They can bring it back at a future meeting. Is there any other discussion, any other thoughts on what's been said?
I like this. I like that you're bringing this up. It would be really nice to just see visually the comparisons between like what you're asking for, like what the HUD guidelines are and what is in right now, and seeing where they're different and overlapping or can change.
What I'm observing when I drive is that, oh, sorry. I'm sorry. What I'm observing when I drive through even new sets of manufactured housing, They're currently being put on cinder blocks and skirted. So it's very different. So, but, you know, we could ask the building department what they're getting, probably, and see what that, but they would look very different with a foundation.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but just comparing it to seeing like what those cinder blocks are, like what the requirements are right now and the requirements
yeah.
of like what we're trying to get to.
Yes, and I can send that to you because I've got those from HUD and I sent those to the staff. So there's, actually HUD has 3 different, and I'm not saying you have to use them, but I'm just saying, you know, they've got them out there. And there's one that is actually a wood frame, there's a masonry one, and there's another one. I haven't looked at them. I didn't look at them this week, but I'll send those, and we'll get those out to you so that you can all see what they are.
And then with the houses that can be moved, how does that work with the fixed foundations or that you're renting a spot instead of actually owning the land?
Do we ever see them move?
Will Atkinson for the record, senior planner. Internally, when we review permits, yes, we, especially when it's a new subdivision that's being constructed, there's one over on East FM 150, their second phase is coming online. So we're reviewing those permits. But occasionally we will see on existing M2 or M3 zoning or subdivisions, we will see the occasional permit come in where they're replacing an older house with a newer one, or for whatever reason, maybe the lease ends, and so they move the house out, and then someone else moves in with a newer house or a different house.
And I'll have to look at, I was reading something on the HUD guidelines again, not saying that has to be. I was reading something on the HUD guidelines today, and it did say something that the units that are certified by them do come in on rails, so maybe that would make them to where they could be relocated to. We'd have to look at that, and then talk to the building department about that. But I would really like to see, I mean, I've worked with communities that were going through booms across my career and very intense growth, you know, and manufactured housing can be a piece of that, mainly because it's fast. You know, it's much faster than stick-built. And so if you need to build a subdivision, if you need to develop housing, they can be put in very quickly. They just need to be done really, really well.
Yes, Commissioner Chase.
Yeah, I think there's 2 different types. You have mobile homes, which is very much a form of dwelling, which can be moved spot to spot, and that's typically what you see in the lease type of mobile home parks. And then you have modular or manufactured homes, which are going to be the ones that we're looking at to sit on permanent foundations. Mobile homes, I don't think you can, I think there's some, you're more in the loan industry than I am, but just from what I was reading last night, there are some conventional loans, things like that folks can get for a mobile home. But as far as permanent HUD and VA approved loans, it would have to be on a fixed foundation. So it wouldn't be a mobile home. Technically, it'd be a manufactured home. So we are talking about 2 different things. I just want to be clear about that. We're talking about 2 different things here.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, so I think from what I can tell, we are in agreement about trying to move forward with somehow, you know, changing the requirements to have a fixed foundation. So I guess my question next is for staff. Is there something you would like for us to be able to move forward? I think his example of what San Marcos, what Austin are using now might be a good place to start off from. But I know we're just discussing this now, but I'd like to be able to, at some point, move forward with this. So
We can have it as an agenda item for considering possible action at an upcoming meeting, or it can be just generally discussion with more research taken into account. It can be from staff's perspective. It can be y'all from something y'all want to do. It can be a combination of both. It's just if you want moving forward, and I know this is just a workshop meeting, we can go ahead and put it on a meeting soon, and that would be fine.
Any thoughts on that? Do we want a specific amount of time to wait or to try to come up with something?
I know this is our first workshop meeting in, I don't know, 6 or 7 months, but I would think we could put it on maybe an upcoming one next month or in April when we have hopefully a fuller dice. That would be my recommendation. But it should be on a workshop meeting so we can see what staff comes up with, discuss it, and then the next regular meeting asked to send it to council.
April the 12th is the first voting meeting for P&Z in April. So assuming we have a full 7 members on the dais, we can put it back on the agenda at that point for probably further discussion. Until we have a really good idea of how we want it amended, we should not notice it in the newspaper until we're ready.
Okay.
And it can be a discussion item specifically.
Everyone good with that? Okay, thank you. All right, we will move on. Item number 5, consider and possible action. 5A, consider a request by Jeffrey Howard of McLean and Howard LLP to rezone approximately 259 acres of land from Agriculture A to Plan Unit Development PUD for property located at 5260 Hillside Terrace in Hayes County, Texas. Hillside Terrace zoning Z-21-0090.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Commissioner Chase.
I have a conflict on this item and need to step out.
Okay. We no longer have a quorum for this item then. So we'll need to get pushed to the next meeting. The public hearing, does that also need to get pushed, or can we do that now?
You can't take action on it because you don't have a quorum, so by default, go ahead.
I don't think you can open the public hearing
Yeah.
since we don't have quorum.
Okay,
Right,
So everything
Thank
will
you.
be pushed.
to the
Okay.
3/8 meeting.
this item will need to be pushed to the next, to our next meeting. I'm going to move to item number 5B. Consider a request by Rick Martindale of Langen Engineering Firm to remove 2 specimen trees for the Opal Point multifamily site located at 141 Opal Lane. Mr. Atkinson.
One moment. Yeah, I'm pulling. There we go. All right, Will Atkinson for the record, senior planner. The Opal Point multifamily project is a project that's happening at just west of the intersection of IH-35 and Opal Lane, just to the due west of the Union Pacific Railroad. There's a development agreement on the site that allow them to develop at the R-3-2 standards, which is a maximum of 21 units per buildable acre. And from the beginning, staff has been working with them to make sure that they are preserving as many trees on site as they possibly can. There's a large number of live oak trees out there, some oak mott's, if you will. And from the get-go, they have been doing everything they can to preserve them and design their project around it. So we approved the site development permit. They removed what they could, but they also preserved a lot. I'll keep saying it over and over. They've been very careful about this. But subsequently, as they started doing construction and what have you, they realized that some of the trees that were supposed to be preserved are legitimately too close to one of the buildings. And these trees are in excess of 25-inch caliper, which is a specimen tree per our Chapter 54 landscape code, and staff has no authority to allow them to remove them. In this case, the Planning and Zoning Commission does. They are out of room on site to replace them on site, and so they are requesting to replace the 2 trees to be removed with a fee in lieu of. And that fee will go to our tree fund, which in course will be used to plant future trees in publicly owned land by the city of Kyle. What it comes down to is it is $18,600 to the tree fund at $150 per caliper inch, which is the industry standard at this time. Staff has full support of it. We worked with them, tried to go back and forth, trying to make sure it made absolute sense. And what it comes down to is they do not want trees unnecessarily getting in the way of the building. They don't want it causing damage to the foundation and future residences or residents at the site. And they also don't want to have to come back and prune the trees and then end up killing them because they pruned them too much. So this was, the report was sent to us by an arborist, a certified arborist, and staff is in full support of it. Do y'all have any questions for me?
Thank you. Any questions for staff?
I saw in the report that he said that there were other trees that they were originally going to remove, but he thought they might be able to preserve them.
Yes, there were some trees over in the area that's going to be on the lowest end of the site. They're in blue on the site plan. It's not shown on the screen, but it's one of the attachments. They were originally thinking they were going to remove them, but they were found they survived the winter storm back in February of last year a lot better than they thought, and so instead they're going to preserve them instead. So it's not, per our code, it's not a swap, because that's not how our code is written, but they are doing what they can to preserve more than what they thought they were going to.
Any other questions for staff? Okay. Can I have a motion, please?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Commissioner Chase.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the request.
Okay. It's been moved by Commissioner Chase, seconded by Commissioner James. Any discussion on the motion? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion passes. Next, item 5C, Council and Planning and Zoning Commission joint meeting, items regarding roles, goals, and vision for 2022. Is this when they need to call their meeting? Yes. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. I need a second. So you're on agenda item number 5? Yes. Yeah, the joint council meeting. All right, so, so the time is 7:03 p.m. I'm going to call this special city council meeting to order. With the city secretary. Please call the roll. Here.
Present.
Present.
Here.
Here.
Okay, we have 6 members present. We have a quorum. Next up is citizen comments period. I know we've already had one, but is there anyone who wants to come and talk at this point? Seeing none, I'm going to close citizens comments period. It's now closed. I don't have the council agenda version, so I can't read it out just yet. I'm trying to get it up. All right, next up, agenda item number 1, Council and Planning and Zoning Commission joint meeting. regarding roles, goals, and vision for 2022. I'm going to turn the floor over to either Mr. Sellers or Mr. Guerra, so I don't know who wants it here. All right.
Thank you. Well, good evening, everyone. Scott Sellers, City Manager here. Last time we've done a meeting like this has been a few years, so I believe that the entire Planning and Zoning Commission has turned over since that time, and most of the City Council as well. So we're happy to get the groups back together. This is really something that the Council's been talking about for some time now, and recently met in a visioning workshop setting to come up with broad goals that were sent to you all, I believe, in just kind of a bullet point format. What we'd like to do is really just kind of put our heads together in more of a workshop type of setting and have maybe discussion on each one of those items or any other item that you all would like to put on the table.
Okay, we do have a list of items that was in our memorandum. The first one was the comprehensive plan. So we'd very much like to hear from you all. I know you had your visioning workshop.
Yeah.
So please, if there's anything on this you'd like to.
This will probably go better if everybody just feels relaxed and the freedom to just speak. So
Please.
as you have thoughts, we have a comprehensive plan that we are working on. So if you want to start there, I know that matters to the council. I know it matters to P&Z, so that'd be a good discussion point.
I guess for me, this is something that we've talked about since I've been on council. I guess for me is making sure that we get community input is key for me, making sure we reach out to all the residents, that every inch of our city is represented, and we get feedback from all of them. Also getting the right company to come out and do our comp plan. I've been in discussions with the city of Frisco. They've recommended somebody. I'll be bringing that forward as well to staff. So getting the right entity to come out and do our comp plan is going to be the most crucial part of it. And the reason why is that we haven't done it. I mean, we haven't done our comp plan in over 10 years. So we've had some revisions of it, but really our comp plan was built when it was a rural city back in my early days. Was here in Kyle, but you know, we've grown since then, and what direction we're going to grow, I'd really love to hear from the citizens and which way direction they want to grow.
So one thought might be, you know, to the P&Z, like what level of involvement does the P&Z want to have in the comprehensive plan? And that's a question for Will as well, over there. If you can, you want to come over here, come to the table? You know, my thoughts are, just as an FYI, I don't know how the council feels, but we really want to hear from y'all during this time. So we can tell you what we're thinking about all things, but it doesn't really help us. Hearing from y'all is very helpful as it relates to all the items that are on Mr. Guerra's list.
I have a question. What happened to where we started before with the comprehensive plan and like all the companies we were working with?
I have an answer, but I'm gonna let anyone else answer on that.
I have an answer as well.
All right,
Okay.
go.
So this was, I believe, 2020. There were a combination, bless you, of P&Z commissioners and a couple of council members, as well as staff that were put together to comb through the different firms that had applied to our RFQ. And so we went through those as a task force and combed that down to a recommendation. We brought that recommendation to council on a regular scheduled council meeting. And through that process of having that discussion with that firm, the council decided that that firm was not one we were wanting to hire. And I was in agreement with that, even if I sat on the task force that helped will it down. If any of you all have interviewed anybody in your professions, sometimes the interview may go one way, and it turns out to be something completely different. Sometimes that happens, unfortunately. But when we are looking to expend funds to do a plan that we're going to hopefully look at for years to come, I don't think we just will that out. And I would second Mr. Rizzo's comments about, the importance of that firm. And we just did not feel that that firm was up to snuff, if I'm speaking candid. So we denied that request, and we did not go with that firm. There are many different attempts that happened to bring that back. I won't belabor that point, but that's essentially where it's been left. And so that's why we haven't gone any further with that. Did that essentially answer your question? Yeah, and certainly that council meeting's recorded, and you can certainly go back to that and watch that discussion and see how that went down, but the council did not feel comfortable moving forward with that.
Was there work done on that we can salvage, pieces that we can, was there work done at all, or nothing? Okay, great.
That was just the RFQ that all the different firms had applied to. And all we did was go through and interview a few of those, comb through their applications, and then we made a recommendation to council, and that's where it went. So no work has been done.
Is council planning on following a similar approach of doing a task force? I'm going to assume that's going to be the case, but
no, we decided to scrap that part. We're going to, we do currently have, Amber, you probably could fill us in on where we are in the process with that, but no, we're going to skip that part and come straight to the council with that and get the ball rolling. But
Yes.
Amber probably could fill us in.
Yes, sir. Responses to the RFQ are due March 10th. And so we would bring back, staff is going to review all of the responses and then bring back a recommendation.
Yeah, so I think that recommendation will come to the council. Council will approve the contract, which is where the financials are associated. But once that contract is approved, that just gets them to the starting blocks. So the question is really, in my mind, how involved does the Planning and Zoning Commission want to be in going from the starting position when we have a firm finally selected to the end result? How involved do you want to be? Because there's a lot involved in that window of time.
yeah, and I probably should have expanded on my question a little bit. The RFQ process and choosing a vendor, yeah, I don't think a task force is needed for that. But from beginning to the beginning stages of a comp plan, what's the term? Too many cooks in a kitchen,
Right.
Whatever you want to call it. I'm just curious if council is thinking about having a smaller group start that process and then bring the process forward. If not, I can see that being a very, very long process.
Well, I appreciate this discussion. I appreciate you bringing this up. I guess play that out a little bit for me in your mind about what in that process that looks like, because there's a lot of different facets, and I agree with the mayor. That's just getting it to the starting block. But when you talk about not having too many cooks in the kitchen on this process, what parts are you talking about specifically?
I think you have to have a groundwork laid first and directions to go. And that's difficult to do when you have a lot of folks, throwing in different opinions on how you get there. I think everybody needs to agree on where they want to get to. I think that's a longer discussion and a larger discussion. But making the sausage, when you have a lot of people trying to make sausage together, that's where it gets difficult. So I guess my question is, I could see council saying, this is where we want the ship to go. Now here's a group to help complete those tasks to get the ship there.
All right,
That
well,
makes sense.
Well, I want to read a section from the charter, just so everybody's clear about what the role of the Planning and Zoning Commission is, because there's a lot of conditional use permits and zoning and site plans and things that you look at, but our city charter really spells out one extra task. And it says the number of members of the Planning Commission shall be established by ordinance, and that the Planning Commission shall serve as the Planning and Zoning Commission of the city, and the first task under 10.05 is review and make recommendations to the City Council regarding the adoption and implementation of a comprehensive plan or elements or portions thereof prepared under authorization of the City Council and under the direction of the city manager and responsible staff. So at least the founders of our city envisioned that this body would play a significant role in making recommendations on the comprehensive plan. So that's sort of where my direction ends, and the council and P&Z picks up. But that's sort of the task. You're assigned to make recommendations on the comprehensive plan and play a role.
But you're hiring a consultant to do the writing, the compiling, all the heavy, because that's the heavy lifting, honestly.
Right. It's not to write the comprehensive plan.
That's the heavy lifting.
It's to make recommendations.
Yeah, yeah,
And so there are
and be
professional
involved.
groups that,
Yeah,
right.
yeah. And I can't speak for others. I can only speak for myself. But I already told my supervisors that I'm going part-time this year because of this comp plan. So I would like to be as involved as I'm allowed to be.
Okay.
So before in 2020, we were very involved in looking at the different areas of the city and how we wanted to approach them, and also talking about just how we could get the community involved with workshops and different charrettes, and how to even just get the word out there that we're doing this to different, how to use like media, social media, as well as, talking about it. But then it kind of just halted. So we didn't start any workshops or charrettes or anything.
No, I think that's a great idea, and I'd also encourage you to use our communications team. Samantha and her team are great at getting the word out, so please use all the tools at your disposal to get the word out, get that input as well, so definitely encouraged.
Yeah, just that stalled because we didn't hire a firm, and so nothing else was gonna happen once that happened, but, yeah, I'm glad the mayor brought up, because I was going to bring up a number of things that go over the duties and really the charge of the planning and zoning. There is a lot of responsibility you all have. And I think that's great, because y'all are going to be doing a lot of work, and man, quite the commitment there. I have to say, that's pretty bold. But I agree. This is where, there's a lot of, it speaks to making a recommendation. That's where we're kind of looking to you all to see how, that's why I was trying to get at where you were talking about in this process, because I agree with the mayor that this is a heavy lift by you all in this board, and bringing forward your recommendations on what we should do with the comprehensive plan and everything that's included with it, and including, and we talked about this back in 2020, maybe even allocating funding to help you all with the outreach or any other things that you all might need in resources and disposal. For me, I want to equip you all with the tools and the resources you need to get the best comp plan you can recommend towards us. So as I tell many of the boards and commissions, keep recommending. We're looking for you all with the ideas.
Stakeholder meetings. Go ahead.
Sorry. I think that answers my question of you asked for how much involvement we want. I feel this commission should have a lot of involvement. And that's why I was asking. If it's only a select group from council and a select group from this commission, I guess I'm seeing it more, and I'm hoping this is what you're saying, is you guys will give us the vision, you'll allow us to make the sausage with the consultant and move that towards council, and then council picks it up from there. And then sends back whatever needs to be, I get the back and forth, but I want to make sure, is that what I'm hearing you're hoping the process will be, or where we would like to go?
The charter says that the P&Z's responsibility is to review and make recommendations to the council. So my understanding of the way the charter reads is that we're going to hire the consultant, and then the consultant's group that they're working with to bring forward a recommendation is this body. So that's, as far as I can tell, at least, and I think council would want to have involvement, because you're going to want the council to be involved so that you're not wasting your time going down a path that the council is not interested in. But you're the tip of the spear as far as I can tell from the way the charter reads.
I have not worked on a comp plan at this level, so I don't have that expertise, but I work on big projects in my job, and a lot of times things are dropped to me, and then, I work on it, and then I take it back, and get feedback and bounce it off the administrators and say, what do you think, what do you think? What I would recommend is that, that we do this. I'm all for the stakeholder meetings. That's something I have to do as a part. I would like funding for food. You always have to have food at stakeholder meetings. But what I would recommend is possibly, as this progresses, maybe we should do more joint workshops where we actually talk about where we are, what's going on, how's it going, and then get that feedback in the middle instead of us working on something, bringing it to you, and you going, well, that's not really what we wanted, or, if we had some joint, just periodic, quarterly, what have you, as it goes. So we could bounce things off of you and say, what do you think of this? And you can say, oh, we don't like that, But we can get your guidance and know where you're going.
Definitely, I don't think we'll ever tell you we don't like your ideas. Actually, early in the meeting when you were talking about, bringing forward, the manufactured housing specs, I love that, and I encourage that you're coming up with ideas on how to improve our city and the type of products that we have in our city. So yeah, definitely encouraging it. But yeah, we could probably have more discussions. I'm open to having more meetings later. I don't know if that's what council's desire is, but I know I'd love to have the meetings too. That way we could all stay on the same path forward, and instead of veering off of that main road, we can sometimes go off a little bit and come back and steer right. So yeah, definitely be great. So I'd be up for it.
I think that's a great idea. As the comp plan progresses, there needs to be periodic meetings where we regroup and see where we are in the process and any tweaks need to be made and to move things forward.
I also want to say, as we're considering RFQs, whichever one we're calling that in the city, making sure that as we're selecting these consultants who are working with us, selecting folks who are really engaged in those stakeholder meetings in their previous work. Because I think it's really important that we, having gone through a comprehensive plan process before, not only having the stakeholder meetings, but having those follow-up, those charrette style meetings in that process, and really coming back with something that we can truly feel comfortable recommending to council. Making sure the firm that we're getting has a history and experience of doing that successfully, and not just bringing a comprehensive plan to the council and then approving it, which is just a fairly different process, not having that P&Z in the middle.
I think that's a great comment, and I think that's part of the challenge too, is figuring out, because all these firms have done comprehensive plans before, all of them. They've all done it. They all done the charrettes, which are a requirement in those as well. So they're all doing that. And just real quick on the letters, RFQ, and correct me staff if I'm wrong, is typically just they're submitting to us what their qualifications are and what they can do. The RFP is where they're going to tell us what the price is for that. So that's essentially the difference there. But I completely agree with you, Commissioner, and that's why I was just trying to hammer down too, because I read it the same way, as this is a large task by P&Z. So I just wasn't sure if 7 was too many cooks, because that's the number of your body. And certainly I'm totally open to doing joint meetings. I know in the past we've done things where maybe we have liaisons and different stuff. I'm completely fine with having it as joint special meetings, however many council members can show up for that. So be it. But yeah, I think this is largely a lot of work for you all.
So P&Z will not be involved in filtering through the different RFQs,
Correct.
But we will be involved after that with the consultant and facilitating meetings with the public and, okay.
I got a question for you.
To speak.
Okay, look, I don't interrupt. I try not to interrupt.
No, I
okay?
understand.
It's contrary to popular belief. I don't want to do that. So, All right, so I do have some concerns overall. Can I have a show of hands as to how many people have read the comprehensive plan? Our current one, that's on P and Z. Okay. Just on P and Z. Because these are the people who are going to be responsible for our new comprehensive plan. And so there's, there's so many elements to this comprehensive plan. In fact, there's 6 elements. And so it's going to be important that as you guys plan, you are very familiar with the comprehensive plan that we've currently had from 2010. Seeing that there's also an amendment from 2017 and another amendment from 2019. And so my concern really lies with making sure that everybody's asking as many questions as possible. And sometimes that makes me a little nervous, like when you guys just voted on the tree, which seemed to be an easy vote, but questions like, how long has that tree been there? And can I read the report, or just discussion of the arborist report, I think is important.
Wait, what tree are you talking about?
The one on Opal Lane that they were just discussing. And it was just an evaluation, just like, I want to see real thoughts and real questions. I want people to, don't be afraid to be like, no, I don't really agree with this, or why, or, dig in further, because this is literally going to be our guidance, meaning councils, for the next 10 years. And I've always said that a comprehensive plan would make my job 100 times easier. Now, we know it's not, as we've been told, Bible, right? We don't necessarily live by the Bible. We're not going to live by the comprehensive plan. But what we are going to do is be able to give this to our developers and say, this is what we want our city to look like. And so whenever you guys go in and meet with the residents, even when you meet with the company that's going to create the comprehensive plan, ask, and give as much information as possible. I'm really excited that I have somebody from the east side to be able to representative, but making sure that we look at all sides, to make sure that we have the best input from everybody possible is really my goal, is to make sure. And again, maybe it's for selfish reasons, because it's going to make my job easier. And maybe I'll be on here longer than the next year and a half, but that I'm excited for you guys to get into it and to really put your hands in there and then knead this dough, because it's a big deal. I feel like I'm super blessed to have been on here a year and a few months and to be able to see a comprehensive plan, because I do understand and realize that there are many of us that have wanted the same thing for years, and so they've waited much longer than I have. So I feel a little blessed that I get to see it come into life.
What do y'all think about all that?
I have a thing here. I want to, just listening to this, we've talked a lot about like council giving P&Z feedback, but honestly, one of the things that I'm thinking about is this is kind of an area where we share a lot of responsibility. What are the ways that council would like feedback from planning and zoning? Like not directly in this meeting, but if we have questions or something throughout, because continuous communication is super important. What are the best ways that you want feedback from us?
How would you like to give feedback?
But I'm the one giving feedback. How do you want to receive it, sir?
So,
there's no limit.
I can't go
you can
6
give it to us
questions
however
deep.
you want.
so,
5 is my limit.
so they could email to council, just send
Yeah.
questions.
We're asking for it right now.
Yeah. So you can email all of us. Just remember that. So you can email all of us, give us your questions, and we'll respond. We just won't respond to each other, but we can respond to individual P&Z members. Council just can't respond to themselves more than 3. So we can tag a couple of council members if we want.
I'd rather it be a little bit more streamlined, personally. I'd like it to maybe go through Scott, and then he can disseminate it to us, and then we provide, rather than individual conversations for email. Well, we got to have somebody. I see your faces, Yvonne. But we've got to have somebody, because otherwise, I can already see what's going to happen. They're going to email all of us, and we're going to have 7 probably different things that we're going to say, And then nobody's going to know what was said. If it's
you're just saying
streamlined.
more formal.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah, and if it's more formal in a way that, it's coming from one place, everybody sees the same questions, everybody sees the same responses, then we're all on the same page. Or we have, once again, an open discussion. But just having emails between commissioners and council, you know, it could go all kinds of different ways.
And I see where you're coming from. This way, we're getting some information, and Scott's be able to communicate that, and maybe there's some questions that Scott, you know, will see and says, you know what, this one's probably, the rest of the commissioners, you know, let them talk about this first before we send it to council or something like that. So there's ways of doing it, but yeah, definitely.
What are your concerns, Councilmember?
My concern is that if someone feels a certain way and they just want to reach out to council, it's okay to be private. They are also residents. They're not just P and Z.
Sure.
So they have the ability to do that. And if they receive a question or a response that they question, they can give that to Scott and say, can you please distribute to council, because Scott can do that, and then we can be like, oh no, maybe we need to talk about this on the dais. We didn't mean for it to go that route. There's a misunderstanding, but I never want to lose the personal communication.
And that's all, I guess, that's always fine, but we're just talking about a very specific task here that we're all working on together.
Oh, I thought you
This
just
is
meant in
not
general.
just, you know, hey, you know, yeah, they're all residents and can communicate with their council members. I thought we were, well, we are talking about the comp plan, aren't we?
Well, it's kind of like the question is who's got the hot potato, right? So the hot potato is ours until we authorize the contract. And then the way I'm reading the charter is the hot potato gets passed to y'all until such time as y'all pass it back. So while you have the hot potato, you have a lot of breadth and width to interact with the comprehensive plan. And honestly, our planning department's going to play a big role because that's staff and their sort of like public liaison is the Planning and Zoning Commission. So that combo is what's really going to be in the details and the weeds, working through issues. Does this node belong here? Does this conditional use belong there? Working through that and then being able to provide a sort of a uniform feedback to the city council, in which case the council may obviously accept, reject, modify, or otherwise. But until such a time as you bring back a formal recommendation, the ball's sort of in your court. I think I switched metaphors, but.
Yeah, I've been on P&Z since 2018, and we spent a lot of time on the comprehensive plan before when it was supposed to be done in 2020. Asking a lot of questions and doing a lot of research, reading, you know, other cities' comprehensive plans. Howard would give us little assignments to do, and then we would have discussions about it. So is that what you're asking? Are we going to?
Well, you weren't able to continue forward.
Right, we had to
because the
stop.
contract failed.
Right,
Because the
exactly.
council wasn't willing to move forward with the vendor.
Right, so we were doing what we thought is in the charter. And so
Right.
that's, I thought what we were going to continue forward once we got the green light. But are you asking us a different question, like how we want to be involved, or?
Scott?
Well, I think, you know, if we look back to probably 2017, the P&Z was very instrumental in going through the chart of uses. And that's going to be honestly one of the large parts of this plan. So there are many components. For those of you who have not read a comprehensive plan, there are many components that are maybe outside what we would consider planning perspective. So we're going to take bits and pieces from the transportation master plan, for example, the trails plan, et cetera, et cetera. We have a lot of plans, economic development, et cetera, that will be massaged into this plan and then everything woven together. So, you know, there is a very technical aspect of this plan that I think is really more of the charge of the P&Z to dig into, like was said, conditional use permits, zoning, usage, rights, et cetera. So those are the things that the council will be looking to you. And then once you have some recommendations, we can schedule check-in times with the council, or you can package it up and then we'll have another meeting like this or presentation of the council meeting. And then just, you know, from a staff resource standpoint, the mayor said very well, staff is going to be here every step of the way, right? So we will have access to the consultant as needed. We've been through this process before. I've done a couple of these in the past. So, you know, from a technical side, we're here to help both, you know, Planning Zoning Commission and the City Council get to the best product possible.
I'd be interested in hearing from the council as far as your thoughts on, we select the vendor and we kind of put the ball in the P&C's lap and let them work with the charrettes, public hearings, working with the consultant, working with the planning department to bring back a recommendation. No, we would select the vendor, but as far as the meat and potatoes of the things that go into the comprehensive plan, based on the charter, the idea is to basically, the council just kind of forgets about it for a little while. I'm not saying the city manager and staff, because there's other elements that are outside of P&Z's purview, but, you know, once we do that, this becomes, per the charter, kind of P&Z's baby
Yeah.
until it comes back.
I'm good as long as we're getting updates and we get the final recommendation early so we have time to discern it and go through it so we can still continue to work. I don't want to get that product and then have to vote on it, you know, say 15 days later or something like that. I want time to discern that entire recommendation. So and I'd be okay that way.
Mike?
Yeah, I might add, we can maybe continue to make the recommendation of having workshops again to get current updates to where we can see where we're at, where everybody has given in line and following the charter and everything else. It just keeps us up to speed to see where we're at, to see if this is a good fit for the city, and we can go from there and add if we have any concerns or positive recommendations or to see that in. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I don't like working for nothing.
You're in the wrong line of business, sir.
So I would fully expect council to be involved in this process because I don't want to give you something you're going to turn around and say, what the heck is this? We're not interested. Send it back. Do your assignment over again. I'm not interested in doing that personally. So my expectation would be that there would be a lot of feedback and, you know, whether it's reporting every month or however long this process is going to take to council so that we can at least get the feedback back to the commission. Because again, then it turns into a long drawn out process.
Well, I'm thinking about...
I also want to highlight, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was also going to say, like, I keep hearing that, like, this is P&Z's baby, but I think something to highlight here is also that, like, while we are sitting in this kind of, like, special position where we get to make decisions on this, like, all of us here are also citizens. So, like, it is really important to hear, you know, how you all view your time in Kyle as well and what you all want to see, because you talk to a lot of people. Like, I think that is at the core of, even if it is our hot potato, like the views of the people around us in this room, when I say this room isn't the P&Z room here, are still quite important to this thing that we're deciding.
Well, I agree. And ultimately it comes down to, there's the charrettes and the public engagement piece, but there's the decisions that have to get made when a consultant has said, we believe this zoning belongs in this spot or this map. Someone's got to look at it first, dissect it, make some decisions on it, and then bring it to council. So if you've mentioned too many chefs, and you've also mentioned wanting council. So in my mind, it's like, it really needs to be in one court or the other, because if you want to keep us involved, we're going to overwhelm you with our opinions. And in my mind, it would be better to receive your opinions. And then you have to have the understanding to know that this body might accept some, reject some, but the feedback is really what we care about, even if we don't go with everything. The fact that you've gone through the process, spoke with the public, thought about it extensively, whereas comp plan is a small part of what our agenda might be, it can be the big part of your agenda, which is how we get the best comp plan.
Yeah, I don't get disappointed when people don't like my ideas. I don't. My life, it happens quite often. But I get disappointed when there's a no, and then that's it.
Where you feel like your time is wasted.
Yeah, because
Right.
then my time is wasted.
Right.
I don't feel like it is. So I would prefer feedback of no, but let's do this. Or if council says, no, we're going to go this direction instead, then
All right.
that's fine. I just
Okay.
hate things
No,
getting sent back to me.
That's a very good point. So the question is, how often do you want to give feedback to the council? Do you want to wait, keep it in a silo until you try to give the fully baked thing? Or do you want to have a couple charrettes, have some discussion, and then just bring an item to the council where you explain what all has been going on, what your thoughts are, get some feedback, and then still have time in the machine to try to put it all together, because that's how you prevent that.
Yeah, and I don't want to speak for the entire commission. This is just my own viewpoint. Is I like the idea of the charrette. So I do large land developments, master plan communities, 10,000 plus homes. Right, that's my business. That takes a lot of planning, and there's a lot of people. There are a lot of stakeholders involved in hundreds of millions of dollars. But we start with a small group, 7 folks. We then take it up to our higher ups, and they say, here are the things we want to change, and send it back. And so charrettes are a great example of what we do continuously. And that's where I'm trying to get at is the charrettes are great because that's where you get feedback. But when we're making the sausage and council's making the sausage with us, that's where you can get some issues at the same time, right?
Yeah, and I think this is a great discussion we're having. One thing I guess I was kind of also seeing, because certainly the workshops are great. I think this is probably the best case scenario for having this dialogue and getting the feedback and whatnot. My concern is that how tenable this is perhaps for those that may not meet on these nights. You know, I'm glad to see 5 of my colleagues here. We were all very eager to be here and have this joint discussion with you all. I was just going to throw out an idea of, you know, once a month, we could have your chair come and bring us, you know, hey, this is what we've been working on, this is what we plan on doing, just kind of a brief update or summary, you know, of what we're working on, what we plan on doing, this is it, and then the council can give even some feedback at that opportunity as well. So just have every month running that there's or it doesn't have to be the chair. I didn't mean to throw you on there.
Chair
Whomever
or proxy.
you all,
Or
representative, right? Yeah.
I'll go ahead and make that motion to.
Certainly, Megan would be capable of doing that, or whoever y'all wanted to point. I just, you know, picked on the chair here, but either one of y'all, if y'all wanted to rotate it, you know, and come through once a month, every month somebody. But I think that would be another great opportunity because one, you know, it doesn't require us to all have to come in a joint workshop. It still is public conversation and feedback, and you know we know that that's a monthly conversation we're going to have, and we're keeping those checkpoints.
Yeah, that's good. I think we're pretty much all in agreement here that there needs to be regular check-ins. How that's going to look, that might change over the time, but no matter what, I think we all agree that we are on this side going to take ownership of this process. But we're not going to wait till the last day to tell you what we've done. We will find a way to check in. It could very well be that, and we might need to adjust it throughout the process. But I think we're all in agreement on that.
Yeah, definitely.
What's next?
Anything else comp plan, or are we going to move on to the next one?
The next item is kind of comp plan related. Item number 2 is downtown master plan, which, from what I understand, is going to basically be part of the comp plan. Or at least help.
Well, anytime you hear master plan that's not comp plan, it's generally our model that we're going to attach it to the comp plan by reference.
And that consultant will do that. We'll be working on
Do you want
that as
to
well.
talk about?
Yeah, we've already hired the consultant. Go ahead, Scott. Yeah.
Correct, yeah, so BGK Architects has been engaged on this downtown master plan, and from what I understand, I mean, they have multiple citizen check-in opportunities as well, charrettes, open houses as part of that process. So I think there will be an opportunity for the P&Z.
I was going to say, I encourage y'all to go to those open houses as well, and all the residents that can attend those. But yeah, definitely the feedback is always important. So.
Yeah, the great thing with this is it's not only transit related or character related, it's design related as well. There's just a lot that is involved in planning a downtown. I know, Patty, looking at you, you had a lot of experience in the past with this. You and I both did. So, we've got a lot of expertise there, and we're going to be looking to you for that.
Yes, I concur with that, and I think that's going to be another great initiative for you all. So essentially, you all will be working with 2 firms one for the larger comprehensive plan and one particularly for our downtown. And I think it was really great too to, Ms. Chapa had her remarks earlier today. I think a lot of I think a lot of things were kind of straightened out these last few meetings between P&Z and council and kind of the goals of what we want to see in downtown and things like that. We probably cleared up a number of misconceptions as well, that P&Z and council just wants to see bars in our downtown. And I think we have hopefully debunked that. The two different bodies of our city have hopefully debunked that. And, I think this is a great opportunity for us to continue to build those relationships with our residents downtown, having those conversations, including them in on these topics. And I think that's going to help us build a really strong plan. I'll take one. A really strong plan going forward.
So I know for Councilmember Tobias and I, we've had these conversations. We both grew up and born and raised in the area, so the downtown was always very important to us. It was a part of Kyle. It was the vibrant part of the city, and for me, I kind of felt like as we were growing as a city and we're growing in other parts of the city, that our downtown was being forgotten. So that's one of the things that was really important to me when I got on councils, to make sure that we re-energized the downtown area, and that's something that I'm hoping to do. And it's the park is something that this council did a great job with, and that's bringing the families back to downtown. You can pass by there every afternoon. There's families, there's parents with their young kids out there playing, grandparents with their kids as well. So it's been really amazing to see that. I'm sorry, I get all really excited about that. So to see the families out there again, because that's what we saw growing up. I mean, this part of downtown was so important to us. We had our grocery stores here. We had our post office. Everything was here downtown, centralized. So making sure that we re-energize this part of the city is very important to us. And I think we can get there if we plan right accordingly.
As a part of this, is council open to hearing about, especially in relating to the downtown, about discussion of programs like matching facade improvement programs and
Yes.
art on the corner, and, I mean, that's kind of like my baby, and I'm like, I think those things incentivize small business. These are private business owners, so they're not in a mall. And it's a whole different genre, it's a whole different personality. And it's incentivizing helps a lot, is what I've learned in downtown.
Certainly.
Yes, to add to that, it's a good question that you asked, because a couple years ago, I was honored to be on the task force with Councilman Nelson and Ms. Shields. And there was a list of items that we kind of wanted to go on. And just to give you some older examples was, of course, the Burleson improvements and Santa on the Square improvements. We also had update to the square, which is an accomplishment we had. We had also about additional signages, events, according downtown business organization and shop company campaign, just help maybe working with the Chamber of Commerce on these type of things. So these were items that we had discussed a couple years ago about helping to get on board with that. So the square obviously was a big success. We hit out of the park on that. So that's a big accomplishment for this council. And it was just, those were examples of what we were looking at back then.
You for that reminder to Councilmember Tobias. So if you search downtown revitalization on our city website, you'll see supporting documents of a presentation where we hired the Texas Downtown Association, came through and did a really probably the most bang for our buck we could probably ever get. Yeah, I think what, $2,500 for them or whatever it was. But they walked our downtown, they surveyed businesses, they put together a full plan, and there's some, certainly there was some low-hanging fruit that we did. That's where these pedestrian signs came from. Programming was a huge part of what they talked about. So I'd certainly encourage you all to review that presentation and all that data that was provided from that, that weekend going into that as well.
Is that in the hands of the consultants as well? Okay.
It's a little quote that according to the plan, that survey that Councilman Nelson was saying, it's like one thing is certain: if you do it for the local, the visitors will come. If you do it for the visitor, you will lose the local, and eventually the visitor will, because it is the local who gives the place a character.
That's kind of like the
And
mantra.
so you just got to have that vision,
Yeah.
that image.
So for the downtown master plan, the structure is fairly similar to what we're talking about the comp plan, correct? In that that the council, you have a company. Now, is it largely going to be in P&Z's court until something is done and brought back to council? Or how is that structure?
So PGK is a little different. There's been a lot of council input, and the presentation as well. So I think council's already had a lot of input in it. I think it'll be something y'all can look at and just get a feel from what the vision is right now. So that way council's already been working on that.
Yeah, I agree with Robert. So the downtown plan, master transportation plan, there are certain attachments to the comprehensive plan that the council has been looking at. We have like focused reasons for a lot of times why these plans come forward. The comprehensive plan is the guiding document, and it's also the document that is spelled out in the charter for planning and zoning to deal with. So as it relates to if we're commissioning transportation plans or downtown plans or I-35 overlay plans, there's going to be involvement with the P&Z, but a lot of times that's council initiated. But the comprehensive plan, which is the guiding document, that's going to be the baby that y'all take on, generally speaking. At least that's my thought on it.
So my question is, it was on the list, downtown revitalization, and yet you're saying that plan's already done, or where's that?
It's not done, but downtown revitalization takes into account lots of different facets outside of planning and zoning.
Yeah.
So it's really, you have to think about your lens that you're looking through is narrow,
Right.
and it's as it relates to land use, and those kind of very specific issues where you can provide a lot of feedback. Think about like what does the P&Z provide recommendations to council on a regular basis? It's zoning,
Right.
conditional use permits, and those kind of things. So that's the area where you're trying to have the biggest impact. You can have the biggest impact in the comprehensive plan, but downtown revitalization plan also incorporates elements of that. Transportation plan, you're starting to get a little further removed,
I'm just trying to understand where you want our role in that. You have it on the list, and yet the potato is with the council. So when do you want us in that? And, are you going to bring it to us when you're finished and say, what do you think? Or do you want us involved in the process? That's what I'm trying to figure out. It's on the list. Otherwise, I wouldn't ask.
It's a great question.
If I can add a little bit, I know BGK was planning on, citizen engagement, and it's a broad umbrella. So, if this group feels like the planning and zoning should be an evening, a workshop to discuss downtown revitalization, we can add that to their scope.
I think that'd be great, because I already started hearing some great ideas over there from that side of the room. So definitely love to hear y'all's input and give y'all's input to BGK and make sure that as we're planning this downtown re-energizing zone, I call it, we get plenty of feedback from it, because it's important that we know what the residents are thinking, what they're expecting in the area. But I love the idea of art. I mean, that's something that I kind of heard that over there. So yeah, definitely, I'd love to see some art in the area.
Well, I think Patty's question is really, so we've commissioned the downtown study and the comprehensive plan, but it's not done yet.
Not at all.
So they're going to be working through these questions about land use and other things for downtown. Do we want them presenting to P&Z, or do we want them presenting to council? In which case, the feedback of one body versus the other would be more valuable. So I don't have an answer. I'm really just posing the question really to the council.
I think
Are we comfortable with the downtown plan being in their court, or would we rather keep it?
I think a presentation to both bodies would be great, just having everybody on the same page and getting a little bit more feedback, even if their role is a little less in that presentation, but having them there as well to give some feedback, even if it's citizen comment or something. But yeah, definitely Love to see
So,
them
so
there.
you're saying maybe like a midterm update
Correct.
that goes first to the P and Z for in-depth conversation, and then the P and Z's recommendation plus the vendor gets sort of packaged together and brought to council.
Correct.
In which case, then we get our chance at it.
Yeah, that'll work. I'm good with that.
But the key there is the midterm. The further down the process that you go, the less navigation you're gonna have.
Well, and something I will say is it's not just like approval things that we're on P and Z for. Like there's plenty of ways that we can give input in the interim. I don't think that council putting it on this like thing of priorities for us, it doesn't necessarily have to be that we, make a big giant decision. It also can be the things they specifically want us to get our input on. And that can be in many ways more than just us having a vote on it. I think that's something to remember with this.
I'm very excited about both of these items. I'm really excited to be working on them. I think that the downtown is also part of like incorporated into the comprehensive plan. Like we can't do the comprehensive plan without looking at the downtown. And then when I drove here, I did go by the park and there was lots of families out and it did make me very happy too. And my kids love that park as well. So thank you.
Well, unless I'm hearing otherwise, I think that the downtown master plan vendor should present at P and Z first. That's what I'm hearing, unless I hear otherwise.
Yeah, that downtown, seeing the families out there, that was the whole goal, was to get the people out there. So now we can build from there and continue to go from there.
Well, and what'll blow your mind is when you realize that just how, that was the playground. That was the thing that we almost didn't go for.
I know, and I saw
Right.
feedback on, social media. Why are they putting a playground down there? And every time I've come down here, that playground is full of kids.
It scared me right down to my toes,
We did.
putting that in there.
Rizzo, Mayor and I were on that task force to do that, and all three of us balked at it when Ann told us. Ann Coleman, Coleman and Associates is the firm that did that. I have to tell this story real quick. And she told us that we all balked at it, and we all had, we got the busy road. Do we want to do all that stuff? And this is what I think it probably got all of us. But I remember her saying, she said, "Well, my team has come down here for weeks and sat in this park and just observed. And you want to know the demographic we never saw in this park? Children." Mm-hmm. And that statement right there said, well, how the heck are we building a park? And we're not even looking for children to be in there. And so I'm glad we didn't let our egos kind of block that or whatever, and and took that faith with Coleman and Associates. And man, I'm so grateful for that, because that playscape is heavily used.
It's amazing. It's a great playscape. I know for me, when I first looked at the park, I thought about coffee drinkers, and I don't even drink coffee, so, to see people out there reading the paper or drinking coffee, that's kind of what I was looking at. And then Ann Coleman and her team just came out and really blew our minds with a lot of their feedback, a lot of their evaluation. So, yeah, they did a great job. It was a great team, so definitely.
Yep, and I know some people feel some type of way about us using the money from the pipeline to do that, but that is a place that everybody in our city is enjoying and able to be a part of that. And then not only that, the little thing behind the Christmas lights as well that came from our park development fund. So no tax dollars being spent on that either. Those are developers that pay into that fund. So really a unique way of helping fund that project and get something that our entire community is enjoying.
The Christmas lights were insane. They were so good. The whole park, it was amazing.
Definitely a lot of families. I think we broke records with the attendance of our lighting of the tree. And, even the day after we took the lights down, my wife and my daughters were a little sad because they said, boy, the lights are down. And so kind of looked at me like, I'm sorry, can't leave them here, up year round. But yeah, definitely it was a beautiful.
It was gorgeous. It was gorgeous. I posted it like on my personal Facebook page, and my friends all over were like, where do you live? That's cool.
As much as I'd love to continue talking about this, and we have some other bullet points to get through.
Let's keep going. That's
Okay, good. I think we made good progress. Item number 3 is architectural standards.
Elaborate.
I didn't make the list.
No, I want to hear. From, what does that mean to P&Z? What does architectural standards mean to you? What role do you want to play?
Oh, that makes me even more excited.
All right, Megan, go.
This is, I would love to, anything about architectural standards. Is this just looking at the whole city? Because I know we've talked a lot about like the 35 overlay and what sort of materials and then, all the new developments going up and stuff. And so is it just basically like setting standards for new construction? And then I was a big, I'm really into preservation as well. So I don't want to see anything that is not, maybe that is a historic or new that gets paint on it that hasn't been reviewed or approved or, looked at by the planning department. So just sort of preservation issues as well as like new architectural standards in new construction. I would look at anything.
Definitely, I like what you're talking about. I think we all know what we're all talking about as far as painting things. I know I sent quite a few text messages and emails that day, so definitely when I saw that. But, just keep in mind status limit, what we can do as a city. So that's one of the things we'll look at. But there are some ways to, try to get the vision of the city, and hopefully developers can see it as well. If we can get something out there and that would set the standard, would be great. And usually when you see that first project go up, you can point to it and say, see, it does work. It does look good. So definitely love to see your ideas on it.
More.
I think
This is John's done.
I think that we've talked a lot about like lighting and things recently as well, and I know that like definitely some of my fellow commissioners have some thoughts on lighting and dark sky. But I definitely, when it comes to architecture, like I definitely think streetscape is something that I'm super interested in, because not only is it like the architecture and things that you see, but like I live on Cromwell, and I will say like parts of that road are super nice. Parts of that road kind of don't fit itself, and then it's kind of this transition area between what's going to be that and then like uptown. And I think it's really important to have a semblance of continuity. So any way that we can like provide effective feedback to make decisions that provide continuity and places for like not only like your eyes to go. It sounds silly to say, but like when you're in one of those apartments and be able to walk to the new uptown area, like that to me is super exciting. That's probably super nerd thing to be excited about. But yeah, if you're asking about architecture, that's what I'd say.
Ditto. I mean, this is, I know you're asking for feedback, but I'll be honest with you, Mayor. This is pretty much a no-brainer. I mean, we approve elevations all the time and materials and things like that. So, this is going to be none of us here are architectural experts or designers or anything like that. I don't know what you all do in your personal lives. Oh, wait, never mind. I forgot.
I beg to differ. Speak for yourself.
But, I'm assuming we'll have a consultant come in or something that's going to say, here's some items you can look at that are within state parameters that you can restrict, and et cetera, et cetera. So I think we've had many discussions as a commission on these items to begin with. So there's your feedback. We're definitely, I think I can speak for the commission on this one because we talk about it all the time. We're interested in that as well.
Well, that is the challenge. Architectural standards in particular, are a topic that the state of Texas wishes cities to exit stage left on. So we've been challenged for a while to figure out how do we make sure that the standard of development in Kyle, from affordable housing to industrial to vertical class A to, I mean, just the whole, like, how do we elevate those standards to require that development meets that threshold that we're trying to look at? It is not simple, but I think it's fair to say that probably some of the best ways to go about that is through special districts and overlays, as opposed to trying to handle that in your zoning, because the state's pretty much stripped us of our ability to tell a building downtown what color they can paint their exterior, for example. We have no real way to do that, at least traditionally. But as it relates to downtown overlays, because we have an I-35 overlay that requires masonry and, architectural articulations and facade improvements and landscaping and those kind of things. Downtown does not have that. So if, for example, if someone's trying to build a building in downtown, even on our beloved square that we've been talking about right now, they don't really have a lot of rules that they are required to follow by the city. A downtown overlay would be a good example of a way that you all could try to provide a recommendation to us. How do we sort of strengthen our code to make sure that when developers want to come in and build something, that they're going to follow the Kyle cut or the Kyle standard, whatever that looks like. BGK can help you. Downtown master plan. It all kind of builds on itself is the point I'm making.
And I think something that Howard had said before that was, and I get that because I work for the feds, and so we know how that works. It's down to, it's in the definitions. So we need to really look at our definitions and say, what do we really want them to say? So that when they come in, they can say, oh, this is what they meant. And so we can, but we can do that as part of the plan.
Yeah, I don't think you can separate like architectural standards from the downtown plan as well as the comprehensive plan. Like, it has to be integrated into it. Just from an aesthetic point of view, and just how, we want to see like a vision of Kyle. I think that they have to go together.
And I am not here long enough to know this, but are there different, I mean, I get the downtown should have its own overlay, and I totally get that. Is there a different, do different areas have different personalities where you think, other than that you think, so it's not all just vanilla, Kyle, but I would think that there are certain areas that have their own personality, their own culture, their own, what they want to look like, and that's something that we should.
And that's something we're going to be looking at with our Vibe Trail system, so that we'll have different programming at every Vibe spot, so the city doesn't have the same in the same area, There's parts of Kyle you go to right now, and an intersection has all four of the same businesses, and that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for uniqueness in every Vibe spot, so different areas of Kyle having a different programming there as well.
Yeah, or think about this, everybody's familiar with Uptown, right? Which is now called the Brick and Mortar District. Brick, mortar, those are architectural standards that they've baked into their own name.
Right.
How much brick and how much mortar is the Brick and Mortar District required to put in?
No way.
0. So there's just to give you some kind of frame of reference for what we're dealing with, because that's not cool with us.
Right.
We would love for the Planning and Zoning Commission to help us make our standards more robust. And it just takes a lot of that detailed focus. And downtown plans, comprehensive plans, that's a big part of how we accomplish that.
I think that, as part of the comp plan efforts, there will be an opportunity for you to take a deeper dive into specific development areas, nodes, if you will, and then propose certain PUD type improvements or architectural standards that maybe are unique style guide elements that we can apply for those certain areas.
Does anybody know who created the I-35 overlay and the standards, how that came about? That might be Scott. If it's before Scott, Debbie might know. Because that worked. There were teeth associated with that overlay. And it helped.
I think it came from Sophia at the time.
Okay, that's the planning director before Howard. So I don't think it would be a wasted effort to try to come up with, as a part of the downtown master plan, an overlay that included standards. And I think BGK is the perfect consultant to help you come up with that because they're a high-level architect firm. I'm kind of looking at council because I'm giving thoughts, so I would love to hear y'all chime in on this.
Okay. I'm never going to be able to get comfortable with that, but I'll try. So I like the idea of the overlay because it sets expectations for the surrounding businesses and the areas to make sure that we're all on the same level. My concern will be how far out do we want that overlay to go? What restrictions do we want to implement on the surrounding areas that may not really be within our area? And I think part of the problem that council has, at least since I've been on council, is defining what downtown is. How far out do we want it to go? What do we want it to look like? What kind of zoning do we want for it? So if that is something that you guys can come up with, some thoughts, that would be awesome. Because right now I don't think our overlay really fits our expectations as far as the way it goes out, and where it's covered. And it would be nice to get some guidance from that and just share your thoughts. And sometimes that takes just walking around the neighborhoods or speaking to people downtown. We're blessed to have a small enough downtown that hopefully we can do that. And most of the residents and the businesses are pretty receptive to that. So I wouldn't mind going. So if anybody wants to go, just let me know.
I think you make a great point, and I think it goes even further, not only just figuring that out, but we had a discussion last year about the uses within the zoning categories. That is probably more important in many ways than anything else. And I'd like to see, talking about recommendations and getting input, and this is what I had a 3-hour conversation in Mrs. Chapa's living room about with CBD1 and CBD2 and talking about those uses. And she was excited to take part in that because I said, this is where you can really frame what you're having a crux against. You're saying, I want to stay CBD1 or CBD2. Well, really it matters what the uses are within those zoning categories. So that is one thing that really needs to be hammered out. The other thing I think, that has been a rub for some of those as well was the, forget the address, but it's where the Daily Grind is now and when it became the Shipley's at first. That was a big issue for a lot of residents, and that building was not, what they weren't against it being commercial. It was just the look and feel of it. And so I think that's just part of what we can address with what we're talking about right now. And also maintaining that feedback and understanding with the residents. I think that will build a strong bridge there. So there's a number of different things that need to be looked into that. But I think going down this road, I think is something that will be favorable and welcomed by the residents downtown. But the other big thing is really the uses. And that's really going to need to be figured out. And I really implore the council to take a look back at that and really task. I know we're talking about a lot of things for our P&Z to do, but that is something that really needs to be addressed.
That's why I kind of talked, or I asked about who was basically had the hot potato for the downtown master plan, because I agree that does need to be looked at, and I'm like, and I'm actually okay with taking a swing and a miss. I'm okay with it's something that we started to work on. We've had quite a bit of a change in commissioners since then, but I think that's going to be an important part of our downtown revitalization or not, and so I really think that's something that P&Z should be looking at and try to hopefully help with that. I completely understand that if you all don't agree with us and don't take the recommendation.
It's probably helpful, honestly, to the council because, like Yvonne was saying, we have a lot of different things that are informing our worldview as it relates to the square. But the planning commission, as I see it in the planning department, get first crack at it, and they're taking a purely planning perspective, which means you have to be willing to give it to someone who may have additional perspectives outside of what is purely best from a planning standpoint. Mm-hmm. But getting that feedback from P&Z about what P&Z and planning department thinks is the best way to lay it all out at least informs us as we're considering, you know, additional variables potentially, so.
Right, I agree.
So to be clear, right now, the downtown master plan, the hot potato is in the council's seat. So I think what we're talking about here is giving that as well as the comprehensive plan to P and Z. So that's the feedback I need from council, and I'm sure staff needs that as well to give direction, because where are we at with it? We have awarded the contract. There's already drafting. Right, so they've already been working on it.
It's very nascent still, but yes.
Right,
they've
so
come
they're
up with
ready
some
for that
proposals.
midterm
Correct.
presentation, and they can either give it to the council or they can give it to P and Z. So what I'm hearing from this conversation is P and Z is anxious and ready to pursue that. And I just need, for myself at least, some confirmation that that's the direction we all wish to go.
They could always do it in a workshop and the council could show up, you know?
Absolutely.
I'm gonna be honest, I wanna be involved in that.
Yeah, well, we could do it, if they present, they could do it in a workshop and.
That's a great idea. And so we don't have to be here, council, you know, doesn't have time, you know, we've got a lot of meetings and busy life, but, you know, if we want to, we have that option, and so that would be kinda nice.
Because you represent your people and where you are and your voters, so you know also what they want from that. And so that's important that we hear that too, because you hear that all day. So,
Agreed.
Yeah.
And night.
At night, 2 o'clock in the morning.
Well, one piece of advice that might can carry you if you are gonna pick this up is, I've heard probably half a dozen times from maybe every single person on this council that there's a difference between the square and downtown. So just to keep that in mind. So right now we have a lot of synergy and unity behind building up our square. And then as it relates to Center Street and the blocks around the square, there's more division about, you know, what that should look like. So if you're wanting to make sure that your time is well spent on planning, start with the square.
and I think also, as Commissioner James said, that's going to be building out streetscaping that mirrors that square.
Right.
And I think that would be a piece of it, so you have a whole look and feel that touches back to that square. But your consultants do that.
Yeah, well, that's part of the plan, is to take that streetscape all the way to Old Stagecoach Road. What you see right here along this way. So, yeah, but I agree, the square and then east.
Square and east, you're right.
Square and east, probably is the.
Technically, downtown extends east of I-35 to the
Technically, yep.
Dairy Queen, 7-Eleven, and then behind the 150, that extension, that was all perceived to be sort of east downtown. So downtown would spill over to the east side. So there have been lots of requests to develop that area over there, and none of the requests have been consistent with an east downtown, and as a result, none of them have been approved.
So
But
if we were doing an overlay, you know, we do.
it should absolutely include,
Whole architectural guidelines
Correct.
and everything else.
Yep.
And
Right.
the streetscape would be consistent, so that's how you tell people, you're entering the downtown or you've left the downtown. So
Right.
That's actually how you inform people.
I'm so glad you said that. I'm so glad you said that. 'Cause we all know we deal
I
with.
also want to.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
But I also noticed, I was listening to what Mayor Mitchell said right there about not receiving anything that was kind of in accordance with the idea that like East Downtown was like in kind of, and as we kind of go through this downtown like master plan thing, I definitely want to highlight that if we're thinking about calling it East Downtown, I definitely think there's ways that we could go about being more effective in zoning and planning for that area, so that we're getting requests that meet those needs. And that's just something that I'm kind of thinking of off the top of my head listening to it.
Okay, we're ready to move forward?
Yep.
All right, item number 4 is Minimum number of stories for commercial buildings.
I think that's Scott.
Is this for the downtown or is this in general?
I think this probably goes back to the individual character areas or overlays, as you look into certain, developable sections within the city, come up with a plan for what that height ought to be.
And do you want to talk about step backs?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So, the council has done a little bit of looking around at other cities and what they've done. Typically, there are areas, vertical mixed-use developments in particular, that if they're kind of a standalone area, different from your downtown, they usually go a little taller. But if it's a walkable pedestrian scale type of area like the downtown, you're looking at 4, maybe 5 stories max, from a scaling perspective, right? It's the whole thing with scale.
And that could be all built into the overlays?
Absolutely, as it should,
Yeah.
yes.
And I think the next item is connected, open space requirement for commercial projects. So, yeah.
Yeah, so this came out of the recent visioning workshop agenda. There was a good tour taken of some of the areas within Frisco, and their mixed-use development areas in particular, or even just their multifamily areas, had a certain minimum threshold of open space. What they found was that even like your garden apartments or even your single-family res at times aren't providing the opportunity for pocket parks or activated areas within them. But predominantly they were looking at vertical mixed use or commercialized areas, ensuring that there were gathering places, art, as you mentioned before, so livability, right? These true live, work, play areas that are an experience or an environment you want to stay in and of themselves, so you feel at home in them.
And one of the things these areas do, they reduce the carbon footprint, so people now are not getting their cars to go to these areas. They're now staying in that area. They live, work, and play there. And not saying they're never going to drive, but it keeps them from driving more. So it actually reduces that carbon footprint. So, yeah, anything to help with that.
One of the things that staff has done really well with commercial projects that they've brought forward to us that I've been really happy with is that a lot of the landscaping, they are also incorporating things for pollinators and different species, because of the whole butterfly migration thing that I've just learned since I came here. It's so important, and so I'm kind of jumping on that bandwagon, if you will, with the dark sky and the pollinators. But I think that's an important thing, and I'm for growth. And I know that takes asphalt, concrete, all those things, but we can have those green spaces. We can create those green spaces and then make them productive green spaces where they're actually serving a purpose of benefiting the different things and the people that live there in total.
Yeah. Community garden.
Okay, great. Moving on. Next is remove hardy plank from masonry standards.
Done.
Yes. Can I take it off my house?
All those in favor? I wish it was that easy.
Why remove, why is that an item? I thought,
I don't have an opinion.
oh, okay. Why would hardy plank be moved from masonry?
Scott, you have to bail me out here.
Yeah, I'll jump in on
overextended
this.
myself.
Yeah,
This is-
explain. I'm genuinely asking. I'm not
Absolutely.
sure.
Well, historically, the city, Kyle, has included hardy as masonry, and what happens is, when you have a structure that needs 80% masonry, for example, 80% is hardy. What we have tried to do, especially along our major corridors, thoroughfares, is when you're looking at a home, you're not looking at more than 10% of hardy plank in any given home. Very apparent when we drove through Frisco again, looked through some of their neighborhoods, even historic neighborhoods, a lot of masonry, but very little hardy. And I would say maybe that 10% is part of their standard. We can look into that. But it's just a elevation of quality within building that we have tried to do as we've looked at different cities and their ordinances, their style guide.
I think maybe it's like there's like one great development truth, and that is wherever you draw the line, the developers are going to figure out exactly where that line is, and they're going to trace your line.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
so the point is not to say that hardy plank is the worst. There's time, place, use. But if you allow certain things by right, developers will gravitate towards that because it's the most profitable substance for them. And they're not really considering the long-term development impacts of certain architectural features and substances. But again, those are the kinds of things that the state fights very hard to prevent the city from regulating. Hardy plank being a great example. So I'm not sure what the request or the desire is from P&Z, but hardy plank is just one in a long list of substances.
Would that fall into the architectural? Wouldn't that fall into the architectural guidelines?
Well, I guess what I'm saying is I'm not sure what we can and can't actually regulate.
Right. That was my question, because I know there are so many times that, an item comes up and it says, oh, but we can't really say no because of they're using blank in it. But I mean, is the thought that if we take it out of masonry, and then they would still have to use anything masonry?
Correct.
But since it's not in the list anymore, they can no longer use that. That's one way that to kind of, to work within the state's restrictions on us, to still limit how much hardy plank there may be.
So maybe I'll jump in on that. So it's more of a question to the P&Z, should the city eliminate or restrict, and that should probably be part of the question. And if so, to what level? One thing that we are going to start looking at with all developments is that at minimum they adhere to a simple development agreement saying they will adhere to the style guide or the architectural standards. Now, there may be additional elements of a DA that are beyond that minimum, but at bare minimum, we would hope that they would adhere to those because of the state's restrictions that are very onerous.
So would that be for housing development as well?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so what is the alternative to hardy plank, and then what is going to be the increase in cost for that?
Typically, so brick, stone, or even stucco could apply.
Okay, and then say we wanted to do stucco. What is the cost difference in that?
Well, again, what we're looking to the P&Z for is a recommendation on the type of material. So whether it's, I don't think that you're going to recommend 100% stucco, but stucco is an accent, stone is an accent, hardy is an accent when done well. If you look at Plum Creek, a lot of those homes are almost all hardy plank, and actually some of them look very good. So again, I think it's development area specific as you go through and look at what those potential overlay or design standards might be. So we're not recommending that it's just a blanket prohibition against hardy. But yes, it does add to the cost if you're swapping out any sort of lap siding for, a higher quality masonry like a stone or a stucco.
Is there any reason why it needs to be limited?
Like, is it just for looks, or is there like another reason?
Well,
limit
when I say that when you draw the line, that's the line that developers will go to. I really mean that. So if you make hardy plank your minimum, developers will want to do all hardy plank. So the question is, with our limited land that's available, do we want to allow developers to build exclusively hardy plank, or do we want to set a standard that maybe includes hardy plank, but that doesn't give them the permission to, like articulation is, I love that word, the word articulation, of design, requiring setbacks to not necessarily be the same. Like when you look down a street, are you seeing all hardy plank, all snout houses, meaning garages at the front? Are you seeing everything uniform and designed to maximize profits and lower quality of life? Or are you seeing lots of thoughts, a lot of thought and investment that went into quality of life and longevity of the overall development? And that's what I fight constantly, is developers trying to come in and build the cheap standard that's all about profit and that doesn't really take into account quality of life.
Hardy, they say it doesn't need painting that often, but I think it does need painting, and that's an expense where if you're using stone and stucco on a person's home, it's less maintenance long-term, I would think.
I guess my question is, so are we gonna go for developers that are going to build higher pricing housing? Is that what we wanna do? That's why we wanna limit it? Or are you going to talk about limiting the amount of hardy plank they use in a development and not just restricting it completely?
Yeah.
Having a mix of hardy plank and something else?
Go ahead. Well, I think, back to the mayor's point earlier, the key is to reduce homogeny. So, again, hardy is an accent material, not the primary material. And there's cementitious siding that could work and does wear much better than typical lap siding. If all the units within a development are predominantly lap siding or cementitious siding, whatever, it just adds to that homogeny. So the goal is to elevate the standard through the city in all the developments, not necessarily price people out of the market. There are ways that builders can incorporate these accent elements and still keep a home affordable.
So some of the neighborhoods you walk into, you'll see that 3 sides have lap siding, and then the house next to it, only the back side has lap siding. So to make it more unison, maybe put some standards that way. Maybe this neighborhood has the lap siding not just on the back ends, and the neighbor doesn't have lap siding both sides of his house. So just aesthetically, a long time ago, when you built a brick home, it had brick all the way around it. And we've gotten away from that, and now you'll see brick on the front is just a facade, and the rest of it's all lap siding. So it's what we want to do as a city in our different zoning areas. So as we're allowing developers to come in, do we want the cheapest product, or do we want a standard for there? So it's not really outprice anyone, because developers still got to make money. They're going to try and sell their homes. If they raise their prices through the roof, it's deciding what we want what the developer is going to do within his project. And it's not really restriction, it's kind of uniforming everything, I think is where we're going, correct?
100%.
So I could support commercial, residential. Yeah, that's not true. Hardy plank helps with the cost of the home. I'm not going to name specific home builders, and I think we're confusing home builders with developers. Developers can create their own standards as well. We did a cost-effective community, and it required stone on 3 sides, and the rear was allowed to have hardy plank, or the top half was on the sides as well, but the front wasn't allowed. So I think standards like that can work, or bringing the fence line up so that what's behind the fence is more of the hardy plank, instead of saying no, the entire sides of the homes, all 3 sides have to be only 10%, let's say, hardy plank, and the rest has to be stone or some other type of masonry. You don't want stucco. I'm not from Texas. We personally don't do stucco on anything, and I haven't heard great things about stucco in Texas. Yeah, that's just I would fully support it on commercial, but on residential, limiting it, we can limit it, but we need to be smart about how we limit it, because you can start pricing out some folks.
That's a good point. And I know people are talking about, no, this isn't going to price them out, but I will tell you from experience that the more brick you have around your house, the higher your insurance will be. And that is an ongoing payment, and it's only going to go up.
Really?
And
Why is that?
because the cost to replace those bricks, even if you never use your insurance, is going to be more expensive. So the value of my house, I just dealt with this with my insurance, and it went up. I mean, even if it's $50 a month, that's still a lot, but it went up, and they were like, well, you have X amount of brick. And maybe I didn't explain it to them right the first time, but I just didn't realize the importance of what the materials that your house are made out of, and how that coincides with the cost of your insurance, your replacement cost mostly.
It matters. Yeah, you're right.
And I am going to respectfully disagree about the stucco. I was just in New Mexico, and I think that's what they use, right? I was like, this is amazing. This looks so beautiful. And so the person I was with was like, oh, well, and it's easy, because I was like, first of all, when you're driving up in the mountains, how do they get wood up there? Like, how do they get all these materials to build like a Walmart? Even Walmarts are made out of stucco. And they said it's a lot easier when it comes apart to just slap some stucco on there and fix it than it is to do, the hardy boards or the sidings.
Yeah, stucco's great. I'll probably get hate mail for this. I'm from California, right? We stucco everything in California. So we stucco everything in California. Since coming here, I was actually surprised to find out that our homes that we build, we don't do stucco anywhere. And I was told it doesn't the weather, it doesn't do well in Texas.
Yeah, that would be also something really good for you.
That's what I was wondering, because
with the weather, what's going to.
because we've got buildings, commercial properties there in Austin that I maintain, and they've got stucco, and they've had stucco forever. It's never gone anywhere. It's great, and as Yvonne said, it's an easy repair. Somebody puts a hammer through it, just go in there and fix it real quick. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think commercial versus homes is a little different.
So I want to take the opposite. I want to play devil's advocate with you as it relates to commercial versus residential. 90% of Kyle up till this point has developed residentially, right? Of the residential development that has taken place, the lion's share of that has been single-family, detached, entry-level. So hardy plank and snout houses and building to the lowest, cheapest amount possible for the sake of affordability. That's Kyle. That's not just like a portion of Kyle. That is the lion's share of what our residential community is. Even the communities that we look at as in Kyle, if you think in Kyle as a bubble, that are on the upper end are below the lower end for the majority of the subdivisions in and around the Austin metro. So the question is, when Kyle is fully built out, if we maintain a commitment to affordability, what we are going to get is homes, the rest of the other half of the city that's ready to get developed, homes that are going to be on the lower end, where we're focusing on hardy plank and we're focusing on efficiency, which is we're going to let the garage be the thing that matters, because all developers residentially they sort of revolve around the garage is how they determine what their price point is. For example, what percentage of the garage takes up the front-facing facade? How far back does the garage have to be? What are the materials? This is how you control, essentially, the price points that you are pursuing. So if up until this point, if we're, let's say, halfway built out as a city, if everything we've built up until this point is at the base, at the low entry, is it right for us to say, for the sake of affordability, we're going to make sure that our residential guidelines allow for the cheapest development so that the prices can be the lowest, so that affordability can be the greatest? Or are we going to say we've got enough of that, and now we're looking for different things to allow for us to have higher tax value per home or higher median income or all the other things, all the other sides to that question? And it really is an important question for us to consider, because I know we discuss this question all the time, and it will impact how you think of. Development standards are all about what is the price point at the end of the day that you're going to demand as the line for a new home that gets built. Do you want it to be at below the entire Austin MSA, which is where we've been for a long time? Or are we trying to push it up so that we're not the cheapest home in the Austin MSA moving forward for new builds?
I think you can achieve that with PUDs, right? Instead of making it overarching for the entire city as new PUDs come in. It's a requirement, it's part of the negotiations for the entitlements. You could do it in multiple different ways. Like I said, I'm not against some limitation. It's just we have to do it in a way that isn't going to adversely affect every developer that comes in. So that would be my response is, yeah, you can control it, but why not do it through the PUDs or through the entitlements instead of making it an overarching requirement?
That cuts P&Z out.
Yeah, and we can add affordability with, I agree with the quality and the look and feel. There are a couple subdivisions that are not expensive subdivisions that I've driven through that are their standards are brick and stucco, or stone and stucco, and the look and feel is entirely different. They look and feel a higher quality. So I like that aesthetically, it looks good, and I think it's nice. But affordability also can be found in townhouses, condominiums, patio homes, duplexes. There's so much in our mix that we're not getting. We're getting single-family homes, and we're getting rental apartments. And I'd like to see more of the high-quality manufactured homes, you know, a whole subdivision of fabulous-looking homes that would be very affordable and very nice. But I'd also like to see condos and townhouses, but nicely done, you know, done well. And so that's where I think we get affordability. I honestly think that, you know, and then add and do it with quality too.
Limiting houses really scares me. So I'm all about bringing in condos and apartments that people can purchase. I think that's a great idea, especially for the young and then the retired that don't want to deal with the yards. But my concern is putting a limitation or putting, you know, codifying that this is what it has to be. I'm all about raising the level that you set, right? We will rise to the level that we set for ourselves. But we also don't want to limit ourselves.
Right.
Because once upon a time, building your garages in the front was okay. And now it's not. And so people who have, you know, 40-foot yards and smaller, they don't get the luxury. When not everybody thinks it's a luxury, they don't get the option with the new builders to have your garage in the front. And so I feel like that takes away from opportunity for people who would like that. And I've heard
just to be clear, probably 80% of all new homes built in this year are front-facing garages. So I just need to put context
do they
on it.
have?
We push back on that. We're trying to get more alley loaded, but it's not that we flipped the table. The majority of homes are still front-facing. But the narrower the lot, the more that the garage doesn't get narrower. So the more you narrow the lot, the more the garage grows in proportion. That's where snout houses come from.
Right.
Like Post Oak, for example. In the back of Post Oak is where you've got 35-foot lots with 20-foot wide garages. I mean, just think about that. You have to literally go around the garage and down a little side next to your fence and around in order to get into your own home. So when you think of, and then stack those up, 50, 100 homes at a time, you look down, you see garages, you see vehicles, you don't see people, you don't see homes. It's just where people, it's like bedroom community on steroids. So some combination, like the larger the lot, even in our own residential style guide, the way that it's set up. So like once you get to a 50-foot lot or a 60-foot lot, it changes and the garage becomes less of a factor, and you can have front-facing garages easy so long it doesn't take up more than a certain percentage of the front-facing facade. And then we require like 2 or 3 different articulations, like something has to protrude out further than the garage. So it's like a bunch of standards wrapped around to give developers options, like I can build on bigger lots or smaller lots. But if I get too small, I can't do it just purely based on price. I have to consider other factors, and maybe even putting in an alley and rear detached, or front facing, rear detached as well is also an option. So to Patty's point, lots of different product types is really what we're pursuing. But right now, more than 90% of every single home is a front-facing garage in the city of Colorado.
That's currently being built?
Oh, I said 80 that's currently being built. I said more than 90 that exists. That we are trying very hard to lower that number down. But yes, we are. I think the most recent developer agreements we've passed have had like 50%.
Is it worth it, or is there interest in limiting the minimum size width of a lot?
Why though?
Right.
That's a great question, because that's the question that we wrap our heads around constantly.
Well, I will tell you from experience that I've spoken to people who live in Cool Springs who had no idea that they could not add not one accessory to their house, because our code states that it has to be 10 feet from the neighbors and 10 feet from yours and half the distance of the fence of the shed. And so this guy put out a shed right next to his house, and it was done beautifully. It had granite underneath. It was really nice. And he was actually calling for a permit for the electricity to his hot tub. Well, while we were there, we noticed that the shed was there and it had electricity to it, and it couldn't be near his house. So I went down there and we measured, and his shed would have to be in the middle of his yard because it was so small and so close to other places. So if we're talking about reasons to not have small lots, it's because you simply cannot add any accessories to your house, something as simple as a shed, without there being major issues. And he was not, and he had it there for like a year and a half. He didn't even call for that permit. He didn't realize he needed to. But because of that, nobody in Cool Springs or has a yard the same size as him can put in a shed close to their house. They have to put it in the middle of their yard. So I don't think people completely understand that.
Your argument on affordability is weakest when you talk about lot widths. Because if you have a subdivision and they can put in 100 lots or they can put in 150 lots, you divide the cost of the land by the lot, that's how you get your price for your home. So the bigger the lot, and land is, we're not making anymore. So if you make the lots bigger, there's nothing you can do to raise up the price more than requiring lots to be bigger. And then the other argument, because we've had many of those conversations through the years, and what happens when the person puts in the structure right up next to the fence, for example, and the neighbor, so we've had to try to adjudicate those, and they're not fun. So I actually don't have a recommendation on your structure. But on lot widths, to Patty's question, the thinner you go on the lot widths, the more affordable it becomes, all the way down to condos and townhomes and multifamily, and that's how affordability really is reached in the city. So it's all about the sort of the combination you're trying to unlock. So if somebody only has $1,000 a month to spend on real estate or on their rent or dwelling, they should have a place in Kyle. But if somebody has $3,000 a month, we really want those folks too, right? It's that combination. Right now, the $1,000 a month is all we have. It's growing, obviously. Yeah.
I don't know any place you
So
can
look-
get
so look-
$1,000 a month. I think you're
I
in
know
the
you
wrong
are going to
city.
push back.
Say
I'm trying to
San
make a
Marcos.
point. You are correct.
Let's start
No.
at 15 and then we.
Right, but it's a
No,
bad
that's not
number,
even a ball figure number, let's be honest. That is like a.
Right, but when you look at the 5-county Austin region and you consider every county and city's product mix, Kyle's at the bottom in that region as far as we have the smallest lots, we have the lowest standards, we have the most affordability, which might be a good thing, but if you do it too much and then your town is done, it's built, there's nothing else, that's all you have from east to west, from north to south, and then you're crippled because you don't have the financial resources from tax revenue to continue to invest in your community. That's the problem that I'm trying to figure out. I think we're all trying to figure out how to solve, and we don't know how best to do it. But
It's tough because for me, when I look at lot widths, you know, I see the same homes with a small lot now going for so much more, maybe $100,000 more than they did a few years ago. So that argument of lot widths still irks me. I mean, it just drives me nuts because our lots now are getting so small where a kid can go out and play ball with his dad in the backyard. I mean, it's that tiny now, and it's still the part that gets to me, you know, because I enjoyed going out and playing ball with my kids. So those houses really, they're making a lot more money, bringing in lots even smaller. So where do we stop them? How small do we allow them to get? Because they're still going to sell those homes for a substantial amount of
Right.
profit. So where do we stop them? And
well,
I
it's
guess
like, what are
that's-
you trading for?
Yeah.
Because developers want the smallest lot widths you'll give them. Whatever number, 30 foot, 25 foot, I mean, how narrow can you get? They'll take whatever you give them. But what are you trading for? Because I was raised on 300 acres and playing ball out in my yard as well. And I regret that my kids don't have that experience because they live in an Austin suburb. So you have to trade density for something. And that's sort of like at the core of smart development principles is you say, look, we have this 100 acres, right, that this developer wants to build on. And we're going to say, you know what, 40 acres of that you can't build on. In exchange, we're going to give you density. But what we want in return for that density is for you to activate this space so that everyone has 40 acres to go play on. So I live on I think a 30-foot lot is where I currently live. It is very, very narrow. But we walk out our front door, and we're immediately greeted by common area that we can all go play, and then a path right down the street that's a 2-acre trail around common area lakes, and we pass people along the way, and so our kids get quality of life there, not just my kids, but other folks, and townhome folks, and condo folks, and big fancy home folks, but also small folks. Everybody gets the common area maintenance. So if you're looking at a 100-acre lot, and a developer comes in and says, we want all 100 acres, and we want 30-foot lots, I'm hoping the P&Z would say, please go find some other town to build that product in. But if they say, we will trade, and we will bring this great amenity for everyone, then you can start to kind of have that conversation. Well, what materials are you looking at? You know, so it's not just about the lot width, but lot widths, that's the entitlement that developers are pursuing the most.
Yeah, but they're going to be looking for a PUD, which knocks us out regardless, right? That's my understanding. So I agree, by the way. That's why I'm saying I don't know if you can create a policy that's citywide and is going to have the effect you want. I think the PUDs are the best avenues to go through that. But again, we're not here to make decisions tonight. We're just having a conversation.
Right.
So.
Okay.
I think in terms of the hardy plank, we should incorporate that within the standards and the overlays and everything, right? We don't have to make a decision on that. Yeah. But I think that's really good to look at.
Okay, next is food truck ordinance.
Tell us about
Awesome.
that.
Yeah, definitely. Let's make it easier for food trucks. One of the ways we could do that is removing the 25-foot rule, roadway rule. Not limiting the amount of food trucks in an area, because right now it's real limited. The other thing is not making it an annual permit, not a quarterly, because you put a lot of stress on these people having to move everything, pick up. Say you have one truck that really goes out and really designs around his food truck, and now he's having to pick everything up and go get that inspection quarterly. An annual inspection would be great. So that's one of the ideas that I was thinking about. And just making sure we don't create our own health department either. That's something I think San Marcos is doing. I think they've got 2 entities or something you have to report to. So just making sure that we are doing everything we can to support small business. But I'd love to see more food trucks, have more options for people here. And I think the food truck is probably the way to get more variety into our city right now, as we're waiting for other restaurants and stuff to come online.
Yeah.
It's probably the fastest way to do it. And to be honestly, a lot of these food trucks now turn into businesses and end up taking commercial spaces. A great example is Abuelita's Bakery starting a food truck, and I hit that place probably weekly, but it's been amazing. I'm going to be diabetic for it. But they're now moving into a building, so it's something we could really nurture and help them get to that point. But food trucks, I think, is something we really need to relook at.
Yeah, I think we talked about those too, because we love food trucks. I don't think there's any opposition that I heard from my commissioners on food trucks. In fact, we talked about extending them letting them renew for up to 3 years, and I mean, just for them to really get their foot in the door. And the food is phenomenal, and for entrepreneurs, for people, they don't have to get into a restaurant space, and for some, it may be perfect that they go into a brick and mortar. For some, that's a whole nother management thing, and they might just be really good at making what they do, and I'll buy it. I'll buy it at the window of their food truck. They don't have to be in a restaurant. It depends on the style of the person, and the person that's got it. Yeah.
Exactly. The other thing we can do as a city is create areas for them. So one of the things people don't take in mind is the facilities. So food trucks, in order to operate, have to have facilities, even if they're to go. It's one of the things in our code that they have to have a restroom, a lavatory, everything for people to wash up. So, finding a way that we can maybe bring in some kind of food truck park or something where the city will bring in, those facilities is something we could look at as well.
That'd be great.
That's just an idea, brainstorming right now, but yeah.
Is there room for that in the downtown?
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, actually, that's probably moving into, the next,
The next item is going to.
yeah, go ahead.
As a sidebar to the restroom, actually not a sidebar, it is the restroom question. Especially if we're wanting to have food trucks downtown and they need to have a public restroom and we have that requirement in there, instead of having it on a per lot basis, can we just open up the old city hall to account for that? Is that appropriate? Yeah, because those are by default, they're public restrooms. So in the end, it's a budgetary question from the city, I would think. Do we have enough money or adequate resources from a staffing standpoint to account for it? But would that be appropriate?
Yeah, the only thing you worry about is people going in there and it's a historic building, so you worry about people
Sure.
going there and maybe destroying something. One of the things that we've kicked around is maybe putting the portable restrooms for now till we find an area to build some public bathrooms downtown. Going into the rail district, we've had some discussions about some of the programming around downtown, and the area that goes from the railroad tracks in front of Lala's all the way to the park is something we haven't thought about programming, and we've kind of been kicking this around of closing down those alleyways and breaking them up and making them sitting areas as well, having a parking by the railroad tracks. We have that, what do you call it, right away, rented from the railroad forever, I guess, and having some programming up and down there, maybe some donuts, some coffee, something that you could come into that area, call it the rail district. It's just kicking ideas around, but really incorporating, even doing a community compactor there so you don't see trash cans all over the place. So there's some ideas for that area, but I think in that area also having the public bathrooms incorporated there, because now you can have food trucks, so there's open lots there. I know some of the business owners there have talked about bringing food trucks to that area, but I'd love to see it at a grander scale where it's decorated. I know one of the things we've talked about is even stacked, what are they?
Shipping containers.
Shipping containers done in a really cosmetic way. There's some really good, if you research shipping containers and what they've done with them in cities, it's amazing. So they've stacked them, offices on top, restaurants on the bottom, little venues, so it's great. So, it's something we're talking about right now. But I think bathrooms is gonna be something that's real important, and then the programming around it, and then what you're limiting into those areas as well. No traffic, more walking spaces, more sitting down spaces as well.
Has there,
Go ahead.
has there been, and I dread bringing this up just because I did that for a while, but has there been discussion of creating like a business improvement district where the businesses, voted on that and then they hired, you talk about programming and events and all that. Does that fall to the city staff, or should there be a downtown staff person that, and
I know.
we know what we're talking about, downtown development authorities, and, business improvement districts and all. I'm asking what the feel has been. Has it been totally rejected by the downtown? Because those have to be voted on by the property owners. Has that been floated? Has it been rejected? Where is that?
For the area that I've talked about, the majority of the business owners are on board. They've been talked to, and they're actually excited. They actually called me up one day to come out and look at some of the programming they wanted to do out there, and kind of shared my vision as well, what I'd like to see in that area. And I think we've got something just vaguely drawn on the back of a napkin, but I think it could come to fruition.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a difference between what Patty's talking about and what you're talking about. So, a business improvement district is really a district with a tax on it. And that tax will provide security, upgrades, et cetera. Downtown Austin, for example, has something like that. You could do something here in Kyle on a much more limited basis for cleanliness or for construction, like in the rail district. You had also mentioned where we would like a Main Street program, National Main Street program. The council's had that conversation. I think it's something to be discussed. If that's something as part of the master plan conversation that comes out of this, we need someone to oversee that. the going back to the food truck or even the rail district, one thing that we would need to provide is a commissary in addition to bathrooms. So what we've seen other communities do is provide a certain area for not only restrooms, but sinks with drainage, disposal areas, even some areas with like locked fridges and freezers, you know, kind of behind a door. So there's a lot of ways that you can open this up, but just know that, you know, when you look into, you know, looking at augmenting the food truck ordinance in Kyle, that there's more to it from a health department perspective.
I have a question. Are there any specific requirements for bathrooms depending on the number of food trucks that you are going to have? Because part of what we were talking during the visioning workshop was about maybe doing a food truck festival certain times of the month. So now I'm wondering, do we have to have a certain limit depending on the food trucks? And the other question is, like, are the cast members going to allow us to use the bathrooms inside the building downtown?
And it really goes back to, are those food trucks permanent or are they mobile for an event, right? And so either way, yes, bathrooms are required within a certain area. Will probably has that code pulled up.
I was looking for it, but I couldn't find anything.
So the county sanitarian or health inspector will look at that when they look at food trucks to see where the adjacent services are.
And to add to what you were saying about, was there somebody dedicated to the downtown? Actually, when we go back to our task force, that was actually item number 4. That was to get a dedicated manager to try to look at overlooking everything and getting businesses involved and maybe looking into providing incentives for them to come down and be part of that. So that was actually on one of the lists that we were going through, but that's a good question.
To answer the question about number of restrooms per so many food trucks, it's a building code function, and I honestly don't know what the answer is. But there is an answer.
There is an answer, yes.
So
I wonder if it has to do with the amount of people and the amount of stalls or toilets that need to be required, especially with hot water, specific type of temperature that needs to be instilled for that, or cold water, stuff like that. And it has to be ADA approved, obviously, for.
And as we get more businesses in the downtown, that'll help with that number as well. So that way other businesses will probably have public bathrooms. So there's a lot of options on the table.
Okay, thank you. We've already mentioned the rail district. Is there anything else that we need to say about that? Okay.
More forthcoming.
Yeah,
Okay,
more coming in the
that's fine.
future. Yeah.
Great. And then the last thing I have here is required type of restaurants and retail in PUDs, and then also restricted uses in PUDs.
It's looking at me.
Tell us what that means. That's what we're trying to.
Yeah, right. So, you know, again, let me paint a broader picture for the conversation for the community. You know, as Kyle continues to grow and develop at extremely rapid pace, the amount of developable area, especially a developable area that is around major arterials, 35 state highways, is becoming at a premium, and most of that has been acquired or is in the process of being acquired by major developers. That presents a very interesting conundrum, especially right now. It's so important to bring up these conversations because without intentionality from both of these parties, we'll get a city just full of single-family residential and then just be done. We know that service nodes are very important to adjacent areas, adjacent neighborhoods. But what do those service areas look like? Are they predominantly commercial? Are they, full of restaurants? Like, for example, the I-35 area, we know that the type of restaurants are going to be kind of specific to interstate traffic, but yet you look up in the brick and mortar district, they're targeting a different type of restaurant. But then again, we're dealing with different development areas right now, looking at PUDs, looking at standards, and what do those need to look like? Are we beyond the era of fast food in Kyle? Many, as we see in our citizen surveys, would agree that yes, we are. However, I think it's really location-based, right? And so there are places for fast food. There are PUDs that probably ought to restrict that to fine dining establishments. So the question as we go through these development areas is, you know, what would you like to see? And, you know, that's going to be part of the citizen feedback, the open house, you know, comments that we will be soliciting. We'll go back to what makes sense from a ratio. I know you looked at ratios recently from different types of services. So again, it's kind of a development specific. How much is too much? Where should they go? What's not enough? The design standards. And again, think of it from we have a limited resource. We have a finite resource in Kyle, which is land. And that land is becoming more and more finite and more at a premium. So how do we want those remaining resources to develop so that we develop into that gold standard city that we've all set the bar so high?
I think you said it perfectly. I mean, because if you look out throughout the city, there's areas that have a little bit more development areas where they've got options, and then you go to other places in Kyle and there's food deserts. There's nothing out there. There's no options. So trying to find what that unique balance is important. When I talk to a lot of the residents, they say we've got too many fast food restaurants, but yet you go down there and lines are wrapped around these buildings. So it's kind of tough, you know. So it's
tricky.
But I think when you're trying to reduce that carbon footprint, I'm always going to try to reduce that carbon footprint. Is finding the key areas where that's still needed, and that way people don't have to drive across town to get to these areas to go to McDonald's or go to a Chick-fil-A or something like that. So it's something that keep in mind when you're looking at these suggestions, because we really want to hear them. Because I know that some of us have ideas as well, but the more people thinking about this and getting more engagement from the public is important. So that way we're targeting key areas and where we need these different restaurants and you know, fast food as well. So definitely. But
I think the issue I see is those convenience items, fast food, car washes, gas stations, are in our prime locations right now. That's the issue. So instead of being on the east side where there isn't much, they're all right in the center, right on the I-35 overlay. And I think that's the concern for me anyways.
Yeah.
If you heard the last P&Z meeting, I was very much against car washes. And I still very much am against car washes in the I-35 overlay area, in those prime locations, because I'll tell you right now, a nice restaurant is not going to want to sit next to a car wash or a gas station. Their view is the car wash or the gas station. They don't want that view. So it's going to be another McDonald's or Taco Bell. You put 30 Taco Bells in here. But I think that's where my concern came from the last meeting, and that's still my concern is we're giving these this prime real estate that we have very little of left over to subprime retailers.
And I know exactly where you're coming from, because yesterday I went to go look at a development that's happening here from a concerned citizen was worried about it encroaching on his property. When I went over there, there was a gas station, and then there's a gas station on the corner, which is about 300 feet away. And now on the other corner, they're building a gas station. And then when you go down that road, there's another gas station right there. And I'm thinking to myself, so what keeps them from building a gas station all four corners of this intersection? You know, nothing. So I think I understand where you're coming from. It's like we're giving away prime real estate when we want options. It doesn't matter if it's still options. It's more than just gas stations on a corner. Let's fill all four corners with something different to give people options. So I know exactly where you come from, and that's kind of how I feel as well. Because man, when you go down a road and every every block there's a gas station, another block, and then in one block there's two gas stations. So it's tough. Yeah, definitely.
All right, let's try to circle this back to 2 action items that I heard. Number 1, comprehensive plan. The process is going to be, we're going to be issuing an RFQ. Staff's going to pretty much be running the RFQ process, bringing a recommendation to council. Council approves a contract, and then they're going to be assigned to be working with P&Z. So to be clear, That also includes the charrettes, that includes the public engagement part. I'm pretty sure council is going to be involved, but as far as what meeting is going to be called when there is such an event or a charrette or a presentation, it's going to be P&Z. So are y'all good with that part of that? And then the second is as it relates to the downtown master plan. So as far as all of the sort of ancillary master plans that connect into the comprehensive plan, the downtown master plan focuses most on planning and zoning related issues. So pretty much thinking that's going to follow the same path. We've already selected the consultant. They've already done some work, but they're going to be bringing a midterm update, and that will come to y'all, and y'all can do with that what you want. If you know, like you get let's meet again on this in 2 weeks or in a month, you know, that process would be up to you. And then once you're comfortable with where you're at, you can bring it forward to council, even at a midterm level, and say that, you know, then it comes back, then back and forth. But I do think it's important that we really clarify where the potato is that is hot. And I think on those two items, what I've heard from this conversation is that both of those, that's a lot to handle, but both those items are coming your way. So I'd love to hear if anybody heard anything different other than that, or doesn't like that plan or idea. Well, just those two things in and of themselves make this meeting worth it, because that's a lot. That's a lot to try to handle. And, you know, I know that municipal government at the level of a suburb is challenging. Boards and commissions are challenging. Frustrations can sort of rise and fall depending on, you know, apathy rises and falls. But for myself, I'm just glad that y'all are serving. This council is a very hardworking council, and I would say probably the most important thing we can all do is communicate well, and that's the thing we all kind of stink at. You know, all directions. We all stink at that. I certainly will hold my hand up. So, is there a desire to try to schedule another workshop later on in the year to incorporate what we've discussed up till this point and recircle back, or is this going to be it for the year, and then we're going to try to keep this going, coming back next year?
I want to allow that question to be asked first, or answered first.
Okay. All right.
Particularly the P and Z commissioners.
There was just discussion earlier about coming back and
Right.
having another one of these, so I want to make sure we circle back to that.
Yeah, I think coming back would be a good idea, but scheduling it seems premature. And that
Right.
I don't know where we're going to be in this process at any given time.
Well, you know how this one got scheduled.
That's true.
Somebody brought it up, and we just said, all right, let's go. I think it was
Right.
Dex that
And-
brought it up.
Yeah.
And so I think if we are getting to a point in probably the downtown master plan, probably will be one that we're moving forward with first. If we get to a point to where we do need to bring something to you, we can.
Well,
we can
all
make
right,
the
so what
question
about
then.
the mechanism for making a recommendation? What does making a recommendation look like? Because in the past, we've had the chair or someone selected from the P and Z to actually come and get before the podium and make a presentation. Is that the direction y'all want to go? Or is the feedback coming better received in this format? Maybe that's the better way to ask it.
I really like the chair showing up to those council meetings. But no, I think that might be the most effective, my opinion, that might be the most effective. And then if a workshop is needed out of that reporting, then let's commit to a workshop.
Yeah. I think we do our job. We bring it to you, or I bring it to you, and then from there, if you're good with us moving forward, we keep moving forward. If we need to pause or hit the brakes, then we might need to circle back here and just decide how we're going to move forward instead.
Well, the key there would be whoever's bringing the recommendation, if it's the chair, to understand that the recommendation is not the recommendation of the chair. It's the recommendation of the board,
Correct.
in which case you're there as a conduit for the will of P and Z. So you're there to tell us what the votes were, who thought which way and the other. So that can be helpful if it's a single. Otherwise, this might be the better setting to let everybody speak their mind. But P&Z's done a pretty good job of late of giving us feedback, and we've seen it on our agendas, and that's been helpful too.
And along with that, at your last meeting, I was very, I know you guys had a crazy week, you know,
We did.
leading up to your next leading up to your last council meeting. But I was very thankful to hear that several of you, at least, did watch our meeting, and I hope we are watching their meeting too, even though it might go a bit long.
All 6 hours?
Yeah, break it up. Yes, but you know, I know you guys had a crazy week, but it was still encouraging to know, because the recommendations we give are not purely only in vote form. You know, there are many times that, and there are many times that we say things, yes. And so I'm very thankful you are listening to us, and we need to be listening to you as well. But I think the main plan going forward is we as a body will come up with something to present to you, and then one of us will present to you what the body wants to do, and then we'll decide from there if we need to stop.
And you are currently on the schedule of like the second and fourth Tuesdays, but the second Tuesday is the business of the city, whatever's before you from an applicant standpoint, and then the fourth is more discussion and free ranging on all that. So, okay.
Go ahead.
Just a reminder, when y'all are having y'all's P&Z meetings, make sure they come up to the podium. Sometimes it's hard to hear in the audience when they're responding from the audience, just an observance. But other than that, I just want to wish y'all luck, and I know you're going to do a great job. I'm glad we had this meeting because I got to know some of y'all as well, personally now face to face instead of on the screen. It was great. Thank you for your dedication, and just know that the citizens will reach, if you reach out to the citizens, you'll get a lot of great information from them when you're making decisions. That's always key. Don't forget the people that we're working for are our neighbors. Always remember your neighbors and get all the feedback you can from them as well. And then just best of wishes, and thank you for all that you do. So,
Before we end here, I'm going to make this quick as possible. As much as I would love to go through these a little bit more robustly, I don't see many computers for the P&Z commissioners, so y'all probably can't look at it right now. But Section 2-73 outlines the duties and powers of the Planning and Zoning Commission. And there are probably 12 or so different bullet points of various different areas in which the P&Z has authority. And as much as I would have liked to have gone through that list now, and as much as I'd like to put my colleagues on the hot seat of asking how many of them have read the charter, I won't do that. I don't know. But so one thing I will say, that there's a number of different recommendations and studies and various different things that are called on the Planning and Zoning meeting to do. But one that I completely forgot about from even my days on Planning and Zoning, and I don't know if we ever did it either. Item number 12, I'm gonna read that to you all. You know what I'm talking about? No. Oh, okay. It says, submit an annual report to the city manager and council each October that summarizes its activities, major accomplishments for the past year, and a proposed work program for the coming year. The report shall contain the attendance record of all members and the identity of commission officers for the following year. I don't think, once again, going back to my days on Planning and Zoning, I do recall reading that from back then, but I don't think that's something ever done. But if you listen to that one group there, there's a lot of tasks that is required in just that one sentence. And there's 11 other bullet points of things for you all to do. I guess the point of me bringing this up is certainly encouraging you all. This body, this commission, has a lot of ability and authority that they can get their hands in on various different things. And, you know, watching you all work over the past year, Megan, 2-3 years now, you all do such a great job. And, you know, I can tell the eagerness to be involved and get engaged in different things. I think that's exciting that we have volunteers for our city that are so willing to do that. But I'd love to see that bullet point start to be a thing going forward. And I know it's quite a bit, and we've certainly tasked you all with a lot this year. But I think that would be great to have that expectation every year and certainly incorporate that going forward from this body. It's the only body that has that requirement listed out in the charter. So great deal of responsibility of this body. And so, like I said, I just encourage the commission to read through section 2-73, the duties and powers. There's also a ton of other things that, as far as appointing and vacancies and different things that perhaps we could have helped y'all out a little bit more on. But as y'all probably know, we do have a board and commission policy now, so hopefully getting that special meeting called and having those vacancies filled here next month. But just really encouraged by this group. And I think this was a great discussion tonight. I hope you all got something from it. I think my colleagues and I certainly ascertained a lot from this. But yeah, no, I'm looking forward to this year. Should be a great time together.
I have one more thing before we adjourn. I didn't see, Robert, I don't know if you're trying to say something.
Going to see if anyone from this side of the room wanted to say
Yeah.
anything. Council members, if y'all had anything to finish up.
The travel, APA conference, the American Planning Association conference. I know we have budgetary amounts, but if there are desires or requests, especially as you're coming into terms or trying to, like, professional development in this area is something that I would like to see you request, and I think the council would support. So I'm just putting all that into your thought process as the year moves forward. If there are conferences or various tech, TML, there's just a lot. And Will can help. Scott can also be a good resource. But if you're thinking, I'd really like to go to this thing, but I don't think I have the budget, that shouldn't be the reason you don't go to something. So have a conversation with somebody, and let's make sure that happens, because those conferences are invaluable to helping you develop.
Two of them are virtually since I came on, so I mean, we had to do them virtually, but they were really helpful.
Well, the one in Fort Worth, man, he and I have talked about this a lot. They had that one in person. There was a virtual option, but I highly recommend, if you can and if you're capable to, go to them in person. You'll never see a city like you'll see a city when the planners show you around. It is really unique.
I went to National Main Street training in downtown Fort Worth.
So where's the APA this year? I heard you mention it at our.
The state one is in
El Paso.
El Paso, yeah.
And do we know when it is?
October, November.
October, November is typically when they are. Yeah, the state one. And then the national one's typically in the spring.
So if y'all
But
look those up,
certainly
and y'all are
encourage the
interested.
state one, which.
Anything else?
Before we break, I just want to say I was not trying to put anybody in the hot seat. I was genuinely interested to know who's read the comprehensive plan, because it is a long, dry read. I know, because and you know what? I love that you love it. That wasn't meant to be rude or disrespectful. It was a genuine question, and I think it's something that it's important for us to know where we're at, because you guys.
Question I used to ask in the interview process for P&Z applicants, but
That's a great. It really
we'll
is
have to
a
ask
great
them at
question.
the
Yeah.
draft day.
So I meant no disrespect by it. I only read it because I knew I was going to be running, and so for my campaign, I made it my duty to read it not once but twice. And I always go back to it, and I always try to just look to see, how once upon a time our city was supposed to look like this. I read it knowing that it is outdated, but I did not. I hope you guys didn't take that the wrong way. I wasn't trying to be rude or disrespectful. I was just had a genuine concern. So, thank you guys.
All right, final comments, going once, going twice. All right, motion to adjourn. So we're adjourned. You got to do the same thing.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, there we go.
All right, we're
Thank you all
adjourned.
very much.